All right, get that stupid thing out of here. Get off the screen. Get off the screen. Look at this. We're in two different locales.
Yeah. And you did the old school intro tune, which is the punk rock tune, which is just coincidentally I'm wearing my Dickies pin.
Ooh, we should talk about that later. Now, before we get rolling and before we bring on our special guest, can everybody kind of holler at us and tell us how the sound is? Because it's been a minute since we've done kind of these remote versions of the Malcontents, and we need to know if we sound like crap or not.
You know
so
what?
Please chime in, y'all.
But just where we're at so far, right at this very second, you know what? We might do more of these because I think it kind of came together pretty nicely. And technically speaking, tech-wise, and visually, I'm kind of like spanking my bad self.
You just don't want me to come over to your house anymore. That's I think what you're saying.
Oh,
thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Paul.
That is so not the case.
Okay, cool. So sound is good. And
I mean,
how you doing, Steve?
I mean, when we know you're coming over, we make the bed in the guest room. Ready, right? So that's how you know. We always look forward to that.
I didn't even know that. That's that goes back to
you didn't know it when you used it either. So there.
That's a fact. But some Malcontents OGs will remember that night. That was the first Dave Friedman fest when I wound up on the floor.
Oh.
He was dumping tequila down my throat.
Called you out on it too.
He did. I think his words were, he looked at me on the floor and went, "Yeah, Joe lost." So anyhow, how you doing, Steve? Looks like you got a drink.
Fantastic. I've got my sparkling water.
That's not what you were just holding, though.
Yes, it was.
You had something else. It was kind of
yellow.
You mean
this?
Yeah.
Hey, you don't see that. Yeah. That's
you know what? I have a beer here that I'm about to pour.
All right. Well, cheers. This is
I love this.
Gimlet.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Henning's going to drop in here, and it's 3 a.m. where he's at. So when he comes on, he won't be able to hear it, but I hope everybody at home claps very loudly for him making the valiant effort to get up at 3 a.m. or 2:30 or whatever the hell it is, and deal with our sorry asses over here.
It's 3 a.m. Frankfurt time, and he made a valiant effort to do this because he's that kind of person. And
hell yeah,
I was so glad he said he would do it, and I think that I think he knew we'd be having fun.
What happened? Looks like okay.
Dickies pin. I have to put it back on. I have to remember which nipple it was covering.
If our audience doesn't know who the Dickies were, can you tell them real quick?
Do I have to?
Yes, you have to.
Well, first of all, don't be so quick to talk about them in the past tense. Those mindless motherfuckers still are out playing in spite of themselves.
But your tenure ended quite a while ago because you were in the band.
Yeah, and hey, all they have to do is say, "Dude, you need to come down and do a set one of these days," and I would do it because there was nothing like being on stage with, well, first of all, when I was doing it, the bass player and the drummer were just killing. And we would just they were fast anyway. I mean, Nights in White Satin cover at 230 beats per minute, doing the entire song in 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes.
Child's play.
And
actually, those videos are online, right?
They're online, and
Ollie, hey, I have a dog. Party people.
Ollie, huh? Have I met Ollie?
That's Ollie. Ollie, stop.
Mm.
Yeah. So we have a Malcontents guard dog, apparently.
Huh. Great.
So
yeah, so we would just like go out of our way to, as when a tour started, you know, we wouldn't do a sound check, we wouldn't do rehearsals before. We would just go hit the road and then give it a week worth of gigs to tighten up. And after about, 5 to 7 days, it would turn into this machine. And from there, the drummer and the bass player and I went on this game of who can outdo the other in speed and precision every night. And it got intense. Like every part had to be perfectly executed at that speed every night. And then when we had it really nailed down where everybody felt like they could do it in a coma, the next night we would jack it up a little higher. And we kept doing that on week after week until by the end of the tour, and Leonard could sing all the lyrics fast anyway. He was like one of those guys that did the voiceovers for the fine print on TV commercials. He had that ability to speak.
Don't pay attention to the fact that this stuff will kill you and ruin your heart and ruin your organs.
Exactly. And even he had trouble keeping up with us at the end of those things. But he wouldn't get mad. He would just look at us, and he always sang with his finger in his ear so he could hear himself. And he would be singing like, and he'd look at us and give us sort of this, like, I'm pissed, but that's hilarious at the same time expression on his face. He knew we were just like, yanking him along.
All right, well, let's bring Henning on because the man woke up.
Yeah.
In the middle of the damn night to join us.
Let's do it.
Henning's not impressed.
What's going on?
I had my radiation.
Steve, you have to explain that one. Steve talked about spanking you. I remember that, and then he said something about being intense at a gig, and I'm like, why are they tense? Why is he playing in a tent? I might not be fully aware of what's going on in my life right now. Then there was why was there a thing with the black and white and the woman and is this real life?
We were bringing you in from wherever whatever planet that you're located at.
Are you smoking stuff?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, Henning, your entire room's green. I mean, that's an alien theme if I ever saw one.
It was blue before you put me in the corner. You put baby in a corner, and that's from a movie. But then you said we'll put him in the green room, and that has nothing to do with it. But I saw that Steven's got green, and I thought the little knobby on the Fryette's green, so we got to go green.
That's right. That's good
because we pay attention to these things. Production value.
Well, let me tell you what's going on. This is the first time we've done where Joe and I are not in the same locations. First time we've done this since the very early days of the show. So
I think 2021. Yeah.
And we do a lot of silly things now, but we did a lot of silly things then. And one of them was kind of like a romper room intro where we had the stars. So
high production value. I understand.
You betcha. Yeah, 89
nothing but the finest here.
Bet. Henning, my brother.
I heard my
welcome.
name.
And thanks for coming to hang out with us. I'm excited.
Yeah.
There are people in the chat who are less excited.
No, everybody's excited.
I've already been called names by people.
We'll fix that. We'll fix them good.
It's your adoring public.
It's the internet. You can't fix people.
Oh man,
That's not how it works.
Do you know who Paul Jackson Jr. is?
No, probably the son of Paul Jackson Sr.
That too.
he's played
It's
guitar on
3
a
a.m.
record or two.
This is the level of humor that you're getting.
Yeah, he's a renowned funkmeister for a long time. He's been on the Tonight Show band. I think he still is. I'm not sure. He's played on
You need to
R&B records. He's just a wonderful person, and he did his signature when he signs off on his emails is "God bless you, real good."
I'm looking in the camera thing, and I'm realizing I look like a clown, not because of the sweater, but I used Coca-Cola Cherry lip smacker.
Oh,
And
yeah, I can
That
see
was
that a little bit.
probably a mistake.
Well, wait a minute. I didn't notice anything different.
Look how red my lips are.
Come on, move up close. Give everybody a close up. You know, kiss the camera head. That's a screen grab.
Right?
Yeah.
Can we? Here we go.
There we go. That's going on every teenager's bedroom wall.
That's like,
yeah, as a reminder not to leave the house because people like me are out there somewhere.
that's a mashup of Spinal Tap, David Bowie, and the New York Dolls all roll into one kiss.
It kind of was.
One creepy ass kiss that even my wife wants to run away from.
Well, so I think just doing a little general housekeeping here. It seems like almost everybody in the chat knows who the hell you are, but for those who don't, and I apologize for doing this to you at 3 a.m. Henning, can you introduce our public as to who the hell you are? Where'd you come from? Where are you? And what do you do?
Yeah, I just came from my guest bedroom, which is over there, because wifey said, don't get up in the middle of the night. That's not happening. So came from the guest bedroom in my do you mean something else?
I don't know. I'm enjoying this.
Okay, other answer. Other side of the street, which is my parents' house, where my brother now lives. That's why I come from. I don't know. I come from the street in Germany. And then for 10 years, I was not in the street in Germany. I was kind of where Stephen was, like Boston and then LA. I'm just some dude from a small town in Germany. And then at some point, I started making music, and then I went to school for it, and then I went to LA and did albums. Then I went to a booth at NAMM, said VHT, I think, and I said, "Oh, that's an amazing amp. We should work together." Nobody listened to me. Fuck those people. And then anyone went to the booth at NAMM and said, "Hey, you make amazing amps. Can we work together?" But I mean, hey, so I don't know. At some point, I came back to Germany, started teaching again, and then made videos, and then some people watched them, and then made more videos, and more people watched them. Now I've got 3,600 videos, and less people watch them. That's what it is.
What year did you start your channel?
I want to say 12. Yep.
And when you started, did you have a firm direction? Like, I'm going to be a gear guy, or were you doing, it seems like some guys take a while to figure out, what the direction is going to be. They'll go, here's some lessons. Here's some of my music. I'm going to talk about this delay pedal. I'm going to do a little rant. And it's kind of this mixed bag until you find, I guess, your voice. Did you have that issue, or were you doing?
You don't understand how YouTube works back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't start a channel because that's not what somebody thought of back then. You don't. I'm now going to be a YouTuber. That wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
The idea of the channel was the dog peed in the living room. I'm going to take a little video on the phone for Leslie, because she's right now on vacation in Brazil without me, and I'm going to show her that her doggy peed in the living room. So I'll take that video and I have to put it somewhere where she can see it, and that's YouTube.
Yes.
That's what the channel was for. The channel was a private channel to share videos with people that wanted to share videos with.
Oh,
You didn't start a channel with the idea of I'm going to start a channel. People will actually watch these videos. This can turn into a business. No.
Right.
I put on my blue suede shoes, boarded the plane, that's walking in Memphis. No, it's it's 3 a.m. 3:22 a.m. I didn't start a channel with that in mind. I posted some solos that I was working on and thought that 2 people in the world might be interested. I was excited about a cool Phrygian dominant lick that I had in there. And so I explained it to nobody in the world. I just made that little video because why not? I think a webcam or whatever I used. And so I had no idea there was even gear on there. And at that point, it was the Tone King. It was the... Why can't my brain is not braining. Cowboy Boot Man.
Who's...
You only always saw his boots. We're friends.
An amp builder who's a cowboy boot guy. Who's that, Steve?
Pedals.
Oh, pedals.
Gearman dude.
Oh, okay.
You don't even know him anymore because thank you, Scott. Gearman dude. He made videos. Mike Hermans did videos. Maybe Phil McKnight. Definitely Steve from Boston was around that early on, and Andertons. So it wasn't a massive gear community. And so when I mean, what most people don't understand, maybe some people understand because they want to be asses. I don't know anything about gear. As the video that we're here about clearly showed you, I'm a musician. I don't care. I don't care about gear. It's nice to have when you're recording things, but the notes matter.
Right.
And then what you play them with.
Right.
But the notes come first. I studied arranging, not gearology. Yeah, fingers matter too. Says the guy trying to sell amps to you. I like that. So I didn't know anything really. Let me put it this way. I did albums when I was in the US with James LaBrie from Dream Theater and this freaking Canuck guy, what's his face, Sebastian Bach. But James LaBrie is a Canuck. And then I'm saying Canuck because Amanda's here and we got it.
Right, right.
And then also Michael Sadler from Saga. All these Canadians. Apparently I only work with Canadians.
Now, did you get into the Canadian scene through one of them, or was it all random?
It just happened.
That's bananas.
And so I did these albums while I was in LA. But you know what I recorded them with? A Pod 2 rack.
Excellent.
Because
good choice.
I went to NAMM and VHT wasn't going to give me an amp. So
you know what, Henning? They're still not.
Well,
I know.
If it was about the time we started doing NAMM shows, it probably wasn't because we didn't want to give you an amp. It's probably because, as what usually happened was, we didn't even get out of bed in our hotel room until noon because we were partying all night the night before.
So, Henning, are you funnin', or is that actually where you guys met? Was it NAMM?
No, we haven't met until years and years and years later, and I don't actually think we ever met in person.
We got to change that.
No, we have.
It has been changed.
Oh, okay.
Boutique Amps booth. But prior to working with each other, I think. Yeah, I think prior to actually becoming friends and working with each other. So where was I? Yeah, I recorded all these albums with the pod because it was about the notes. It had to be the right chord and arrangement. And I mean, it sounded bad, not by today's standards, by what I can do now. Oh my God, the way that these albums could sound now. But every album we look back at that we've ever done, we think could now sound better. That's just what it is.
I'm all over records.
Or you go back and try to make the record sound like that now.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have gone back and redone some of these songs with better guitar sounds and stuff like this. But the thing is, but out of, I'm going to say 1,000 reviews of my albums, not a single one, not one ever said, oh, the guitar sounds aren't good. It was usually very high production value. They positively pointed out the production value instead of what they actually should have done, saying, well, it doesn't sound that great, but it's good music. But that's what I did back then. So I came back to Germany, and gear failure led to me reusing amps. I had a Pod XT, and its ADDA converter, ADDA, that's a thing, broke. So I did have a Fender Hot Rod combo, possibly one of the best pedal platforms you could ever buy. Kept getting more expensive, but back then they were like $650.
Oh, and they were ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So
and that is a killer pedal platform. I mean, I recorded actually an album that's got Steve Walsh from Kansas and loads of big people on it. It's got super massive metal sounds on it. It's that combo with a amp taken out as a cab in an ISO cab. That was the cab I used for almost for everything. And it's massive sound. It's a killer amp. So I had that, but I needed those lead sounds, those Soldano type leads, those, hey, I'm Steve Vai. The lead sounds that I could very easily get with the pod. And so I started to look into pedals. This was after I've done 15 albums or something.
Wait, so hold on. So you weren't originally playing amplifiers and then went to the pod stuff to be convenient. That's kind of where you started your career, was playing on the Line 6 stuff. And then you moved into amps later on?
Yeah.
Oh,
pretty much almost after I was done with all the albums.
Got it. Oh, interesting.
So I think the last 2 or 3 albums I did with amps. But that started my looking into sounds journey. So I had that hot rod, and I looked into pedals. So I wanted to get that lead sound with pedals, which you can equate. It's an estimation, but you can it never really worked. And right. I bought a bunch of distortion pedals. Then I bought La Boga Alligator amp, which didn't have the high gain, but a very nice, like, chunky rhythm. And I scored is it a Hot Rod 50 Soldano? Yeah. For $560.
Okay. Now, La Boga is a European brand that's produced where? In
Poland.
Poland, yeah, right.
And Henning, are you back in Europe at this point? Or are you still here?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm back in Europe.
Okay.
And I'm back to teaching guitar. I started completely over here. Not a lot of money, so I had these 2 or 3 heads, and actually for that album, the Alligator was the main rhythm sound, and the leads, even though I had the Soldano, actually the Blackheart Killer Ant. It's a 1-watt head that my mom got me for Christmas. It was $120 new. Do you know that amp?
No, but that's the nice price. If it turns on, you're in business.
It's this big. It's all tube. it is 1 watt. It's got 1 knob, and the guts inside. What it is it's literally a Marshall fully cranked to everything with 1 knob. And so
what tube's it using?
I don't know. Warm ones. I don't know. They I guess they glow. Whatever you need for 1 watt, I have no idea. But the thing is, you crank that and it sounds fantastic. You put an SD1 in front of it, that rivaled, it sounded exactly like the Soldano, with the one tiny difference that the attack was more pronounced. It was a little bit more precise. And so I was playing the Stei Moos guitar. Stei Moos was supposed to play on the album.
Oh.
And he would have if he had found the email in time. And I love that story because it makes me look good. So I did placeholder solos for most of the songs and sent these to Stei Moos. And then when it was too late, he found the email and wrote back and said, yeah, sorry, I just found this, bummer, but you know what? I listened to everything. It sounds like you don't need me. It's, pretty much what I would have done.
And you're just going, that's right.
I'm like, right. I was trying to do, what would he have done there as an idea? So I was playing that guitar and I was doing alternate picking stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, he was polite and kind, but let's forget about that. Steve said I did a good job, so I'm okay.
Yeah. You were co-signed by Stei Moos. Nice job.
The old the Skunk Baxter story where he dragged a producer dragged him into a session where he didn't think things were sounding too good, and he got Skunk Baxter to come in and, hey, listen to this and tell me what it needs. And he dragged in a bunch of amps and 20 guitars, and he listened to the tracks, and he said it doesn't need anything. Packed up all his guitars and amps and left, and got paid like double scale for the session. And
I remember that. I remember. Yeah.
I don't do anything gig and then I get paid. I like that. Let's do that for your next product. Okay. Like I'm just going to say, this is great. Done. Full rate.
Yeah. Yeah. No notes. No notes. Just go buy it.
No notes.
It's great.
Well done, Steve. Buy it. Like no sounds, nothing.
Well, I mean, the thing is it's worth it to pay somebody who knows what they're talking about to come in and go, ship the motherfucker, just ship it, and he didn't let his ego, anybody else would have gone in there and like pissed all over it and made it like far, far worse. And then took their money and ran.
The fact that I can tell that story to me, I mean, I know it's not true. I'm a mediocre guitar player, but it's nice. And everyone always bitched about my people that thought they could tell bitched about my drum programming, because I'm kind of very good at drum programming because everything I've done had programmed drums and nobody could tell. But of course, the people that knew wanted to tell you, oh, it's totally programmed. I can tell that. So on that album, another flex here, Neil Peart, another Canadian. Hey, Amanda, how do you say that? Neil Peart.
Peart is the
that
official
guy,
pronunciation.
From that Canadian band was supposed to play on some songs, and again, didn't happen. So when he heard the album that he was supposed to play on, he's like, "Now I got this on an email from the guy who financed the album," and Neil apparently said, "So if this is played, why in the world isn't this guy touring?" And I know of him. Who's this Henning Pauly guy? If this is played, why don't I know him? Because that's like some of the best, just brilliant drumming, whatever. And if it's programmed, you know what? I can't tell. So if Neil can't tell, then everyone can just shut the fuck up.
You're going. Yeah.
Because then everything is. Then anyone saying, "Oh, it's programmed," I can totally tell. Programmed drums done a feeling. You know what? Neil doesn't think so, so go away.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I'm
so
just going to give it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
To shorten the story, I did all that stuff, and then I got into some pedals, and I ordered an MXR Dynacomp because I wanted to do hybrid chicken pickiny stuff. And
yeah,
I guess you need a compressor for that. Again, me not knowing shit. And at the same time, I was like, oh, I got, $60 left over. And Thomann had these very cheap Harley Benton branded pedals. So I bought one that's an OCD clone and one that's a Sans Amp, whatever, Deluxe Reverb clone. And they were from Joyo.
Okay.
Who made the pedals. So I bought these and they arrived and I was like, holy crap, they sound killer. And I had one of my students there at the time and he's a great player. So I said, let's make a video about these, not knowing that pedal reviews were a thing. I had no idea. But the thing is, a lot of people started their channels, they had never recorded a guitar. Fluff actually said that. Fluff said, when I started my channel, I had never recorded a guitar. They came from somewhere else. But, for me, I had run studios. I mean, I know how to record a guitar. And I know how to record a voice with a good mic. So what came out of that video is what I do is, studio level, at least audio recording. And then people really responded to that because these really cheap Chinese pedals they didn't get good videos. They had videos of people with their phones back then on, lying on the amp. So people were like, oh, these are the best videos for these pedals that are out there.
Right.
Make more. So I called up Thomann, got the rest of the series, and then I realized that they're not actually made by Thomann, they're made by Joyo, and that Joyo has a couple more. So I contacted them in China, which wasn't easy, and they sent me a couple more. And that's how I got into making more of these videos. And they did really well because for that level of gear, nobody had decent videos that were actually a mic'd amp. And back then it was a mic'd amp. I had just built the studio over there and I had 7 cabs in ISO cabs down in the basement. And I had a patch.
Only 7?
Yeah. I had the whole basement is ISO cabs. There's actually a giant one for a 412 that was never used. It was just there in case someone brought in a 412, and they were all mic'd in there. All the mic lines were going into a patch bay, and I could literally go. I'm gonna go into this cab now, and I just patched it.
Yeah, that's the Tim Pierce setup that he has at his house. It's not 7 cabs, but it's that same thing. Down in his garage, he has this giant tomb that he keeps his cabs in, mic'd up, and then he's upstairs, and he
might be. I think he's got 4 412s, and then something else. Probably has 7. But
I know he owns that many. I mean, when I was there, I think he had 2 or maybe 3 in there.
He's got one of the first 412 cabs we ever made.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
And he said, "Oh yeah, I have that." And I go, "Really? And you like it?" Oh no.
But Henning, there's this buzz phrase now in this online space, like how do you break in and do this stuff? And people are talking about having an unfair advantage, like identify what your unfair advantage is. And yours was, oh, I actually know how to record this shit and get a great sound out of it. And you're one of the first guys to show up and go, yeah, I've been doing this thing my whole life. So you arrive on the YouTube scene. That's your unfair advantage. You're one of the first guys to show up and actually know how to mic a cab, get a good sound out of your stuff. And then people are tuning in.
I have to be, yes, in the very beginning, yes. But if we look at the secret of my success, I don't know if what I've done can be called success. But when people say, how to break into the scene, first of all, it's the wrong question. I didn't do this to make money. I didn't do this to start a YouTube channel. I didn't do this because I thought there'd be a career in this. Right. That is, for any job you want to do well, that is the wrong motivation. Steve,
100%.
Did you get into building amps because you thought it could make you rich?
You got into videos the same way I got into amps. I fell backwards into it.
It's something you're passionate about. And because I worked for an ad agency back in the San Bernardino area where the studio was, it was the studio of an ad agency. I had to learn some video editing and filming used car commercials for Don's Auto Center. Do you know Don's Auto Center? That's in
no, but Montana. Many. Oh, Fontucky. Oh, I know Fontucky.
Oh yeah. Dawn's
Oh,
Auto. And
yeah.
I wrote many jingles for Dawn's Auto Center.
Okay, yeah.
So
My life.
yeah, in the heart of Fontana on Valley, you will find a place that's been around a long time, but now we're changing its face. Blah blah blah. I think they did a remodel, so I literally wrote a jingle for that. I wrote many jingles for that area and Redlands and all that stuff. So
Redlands. Oh my god.
Yeah, the
60
Inland
Cycle
Empire.
Steve. Yeah,
Yep.
says Inland
Yep.
Empire.
The
Gross.
Inland Empire. That was my hood.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Played so many gigs.
And
That
what was I gonna say? I can't remember.
You were talking
Anyway,
about
it's-
you didn't do that because you thought you were going to make money.
Yeah. Because and people say, how do you get into YouTube? But that's not why. Do something that you're passionate about, and because you're passionate about it, you're gonna be good. And so I worked for this ad agency, also did video stuff for them. So I already had an unfair advantage. I didn't have to really completely break into video editing. For the first video, I used iMovie. And was like, no, that's not happening. So for the second video, I spent $240 and bought Final Cut because I needed a real tool.
Yeah.
So when I do something, I don't know if people have noticed, I do it as well as I possibly can. That's why I've got 3 video studios and 50 cameras. It's completely unnecessary, utterly ridiculous.
Your production values are insane.
But if I do something, I want to do it well, because otherwise there's no point in doing it. And
the thing about having the right tools is not having all the tools or as many tools as you can buy. It's just, I know how you work. It's workflow, time.
It's workflow.
And
you can't do it all with one camera.
When you need a thing that you need that thing right now. You need a quick way to solve a quick problem. And it's entirely a workflow issue, and you need to solve that. It's not about having the bitch and the stuff. It's about, know what? I just grabbed this piece and plug it in here. I can get this done, and I'm done, and I'm on to the next thing.
We just bought a new. Where is it? Yeah. We just bought a new Atmos monitor. I have 6 of them. I have every model they make. So why did I buy this? Because it's very thin and small, and this one has camera control over my FX3, so that when you're touching the screen, it's following the focus, which the others don't. So Leslie was doing product shots, and I pride myself in the product shots she does, and I take full credit for it. So she was not happy with the focus on the little screen. She couldn't really see it, and she had stuff out of focus. And I said, well, this would help because you've got a bigger screen and you can touch follow focus. So $375 later, I've got screen number 7 because workflow.
Right.
If it helps with something.
Yeah. Now, just putting a bookmark in that. Tell us about Leslie. Who's Leslie, and how does she factor into what you're doing? Sounds like you've got simpatico.
She is the woman that lives across the street, and sometimes we do it.
And she tells you not to sleep in the bedroom if you're going to get up at 3 a.m. and go on a stupid podcast in America.
So the secret to a happy marriage, and I'm fully serious about this, is don't live with your wife. Just don't live in the same house, and it works beautifully. We got together in, I think, 2012 because my previous girlfriend thought she wants to have kids, and that's a big nana. No, we're not doing that. And so we split up. She just, that was the one thing she had on her mind, and very clearly the one thing that wasn't going to happen for me. And so what do? You're like mid to late 30s. You're not going out to bars and clubs, most certainly not here. And if you knew that your relationship had ended because of that, you're not going to go somewhere, meet someone, and like, you know what? kind of cute and all that, but do you want kids? How do you get that out of the way in the first conversation, first day, week, month? When do you bring up kids to then find out, you know what, we're going to have to split up again because you don't want that? So I went on a dating website because he can weed out the ones that, say I want kids. But then also because I lived in the States, I can't watch German TV. I need to watch stuff in English. So, let's make a wish list. Fluent English. And so that we don't get into arguments and feel stupid about each other. Not someone who's into Jesus. So I was looking for an
Those dating
atheist.
sites have these little circle slash emojis for all the different things like that you.
It's just there are actually certain, like it says religion, kids. Yes, do you want kids? I mean, there's things that you literally check, and so in languages, so fluent English, don't want kids, and no Jesus, and so I knew that these things would create problems in a relationship long term. What music does she listen to? Any of that? Who cares? That's not relevant. And so we found each other there, and I think a year or year and a half later, she lived about 45 minutes away. We commuted, and she said, I want to move closer to you. And then my grandma's old house became free and on the other side of the street, and she moved in there because at that point in the relationship, it wasn't move in with me time. But also, she wouldn't have been happy because the whole house was built around the studio. So if I had abandoned the studio, which at that point in time was the plan, not YouTube, then it was literally, there would have been a band in her house on the weekend. She couldn't have been in her kitchen without the band being right there. Zero privacy. Also, loads of cats and dogs. And then they'd be on everyone, and it wouldn't be a very professional work environment. It wouldn't have made sense to have that all in the same house. So she moved on the other side of the street, and it works. We're at her place one night, my place the other night. They're both our places.
Wait, you're still doing this arrangement?
Oh, yes.
That's fascinating. Wow, that's cool.
You can't possibly live with your wife. That's how you start fighting. See,
you just learn how to fight creatively. That's all.
Like here's the thing: we don't ever fight. I think honestly, I want to say 12 years, we might have had 2 little fights. That was about it. That's
not enough. That's not enough, Henning. You should practice your fighting more.
Like the things that happen, like you left the toothpaste open and shit like this. She's got her toothpaste, I got mine. I didn't bring the trash out. You know what? My trash, it's her trash. I mean, she'll still yell at me for that, but it doesn't get to the point where it's in her space. If my trash is overflowing, it annoys her, but it's not her trash overflowing. So the secret to our happy marriage is not to live together, but about 50 meters apart across the street.
Wow. Now
she has a complete space where she can decorate the way she wants and get away from me making music or these things in the middle of the night. It really works.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's kind of Build-A-Bear. You can do it however you want. There's no rules. Make it so that it works for you.
What I wanted to say when you asked, what's the secret or what my special thing was, I have to be 100% honest. I think the reason why the channel got to where it is, we want to think quality, but that's not true. It was my student Kiana. I'm pretty sure it was a pretty young girl who was in a lot of my videos that attracted pervy old guys because they like
Interesting.
a video about gear. I mean, would you watch? I mean, nowadays, women on Instagram doing this on loop. I don't understand why people watch that. Somebody should tell these people that there's internet pornography. But apparently that's the world we live in now. Short form content of women standing there, not wearing a lot. But if you can watch a gear video, but there's also a witty, smart young girl, well, then you probably watch that. And Kiana was a student of mine when I taught guitar, and fluent English because her mom's American, and super smart. And I taught her about all these things, and then she wanted to learn about guitar and some pedals. So she came over, and we made these videos together. And I explained things to her, which then people are saying, "Why is he mansplaining?" Well, when we did this, first of all, mansplaining wasn't the term, and secondly, it is called teaching.
Right.
Because sometimes mansplaining, there is a thing called mansplaining. I get it, but you cannot just say some old guy is explaining to a young girl how something works and say mansplaining. If the younger girl said, "Teach me about it," it is called teaching. Because teachers in schools are not mansplaining to all the girls in the class. It's called teaching. But we did it in front of a camera. The teaching. And
I caught that.
Yeah, sorry, I had to. And,
I caught it.
People loved our interaction because she didn't take shit from me, And I think that is responsible for a big boost at that point in time in terms of subscribers. So
the thing I really liked about that was that she didn't hold back. She would say, "You're an idiot," and I just went, "Okay." They've got some kind of. It didn't look like a boy and girlfriend thing. It just looked like they have an understanding, and I like that.
Yeah, and I don't censor comments. If you want to call me whatever you want to call me. There's a few things, very few things that I will erase. And once anything with calling me a Nazi. Because it's very ignorant, low-hanging fruit. I'm German, I'm bald. Yeah, sure, must be a Nazi. Fuck off, you idiot. And
right.
And the other thing was stuff about Kiana when it was literally very sexually addressed to her, and you won't believe how horrible YouTube commenters are.
Yeah, fuck that. Get out of here.
It's like, I do her, I'm pretty sure they're doing it. And like, really, honestly,
you're done. You're done.
If you are, I can't understand why in our world of gear stuff, there are not a lot of women. I mean, almost none, because it's not a minefield. It's a full-on nuclear explosion already happening, and as a woman, you're sitting right in the middle of it. It's horrible. It's immediately turns sexual, and look at Mimi Sounds or whatever, any of these channels. It's like, "Oh, I really like your dress. Oh, you look so pretty today." It's like, really?
It's disgusting, man.
Here's a solo. Look at that. Have you commented on the music at all? No, it's filled with that. So whenever something really went across the line, I erase those.
Hey, man, I applaud that, because you're also like, I don't care about, like, you can say whatever you want about me, whatever. I mean, I do think the whole Nazi thing is a good line to draw.
Yeah.
But that bullshit, treating her that way, that's some nonsense.
She was 16 or something. It's like,
oh my God.
Yeah, no, we don't have to look at that crap.
No, and nobody has to.
Yeah, but in terms of why did my channel get so big, despite of me being in it and my playing and whatever, it's probably because of her.
But you have to have some special sauce to sustain that, though. So I know you're a very humble guy, but you've got a thing. You really got a thing, and people love that. I'm deflect it.
I don't know. I mean, I'm honest. And at some point the silly sweater started, which is maybe something why people come back, like what the crap's he wearing today? That is very clearly deliberate. I mean, I do wear them outside because I get them for free. So why buy other clothing? I'm an idiot. And Leslie has to walk around with the guy dressed in unicorns and stuff. But hey, I find that funny.
Wait, you get the gear for free?
Oh yeah.
So what is this? Where does this come from?
Poland.
Okay.
So
and did you start wearing this stuff and then it became a deal, or did?
Yeah. No. What happened is I bought a bunch of knit sweaters that had like big collars and big buttons because I actually thought they were cool.
That's the first time I've ever seen you shrink from anything, Henning.
I thought they were fashionable, and so I bought these and wore them in videos, and then some people said the guy with the weird sweaters. I was known as the guy with the weird sweaters, so it was a funny thing when Dan from Ibanez was here, or Martin Miller, whatever, the running gag was they have to wear one of the silly sweaters, which are very, very warm because they've got these huge collars and all knit. And then I found these really silly sweaters, I think Facebook or whatever, with like, cats floating in space, eating burgers and whatever, just stupid stuff. Yeah. And so ordered some, and they're expensive. These things are like $80 a pop.
I figured they're not cheap. They don't look cheap, actually.
And so ordered a few and wore them in videos, and then wrote to the company and said, look, I'll wear your very ugly things if you send them to me. So every 3-4 months, I put in a new order of whatever is new. And they sent me like 15, 20 new sweaters and T-shirts. They've made some custom. I don't get paid, but I get the sweaters, and I have probably 100 and more. I'm probably way over 100 by now.
Wow.
That's the arrangement.
And the video,
there's such an explosion. Oh, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Well, the beauty of it is that it works for you, and it isn't something that anybody else is going to do, because if they try it, it'll be just such an obvious cop, and it won't fly. That's
you got to own it.
The thing is, I have. Oh God! Landon Bailey asks any bear sweaters. Oh fuck! Landon Bailey is a troll. He's the ultimate internet troll. So okay, I will explain this.
Okay.
I have to. Thank you, Landon. You ass.
Yeah.
So, your friends.
All right.
Yeah.
Welcome, Landon.
Landon and I we slept in bunk beds at NAM at the NAM house. Sponsored by
hell yeah.
So this Polish company sometimes does memes, and sometimes Polish memes that I don't understand, and then someone from Poland will watch and like, oh really, you're into that? I'm like, what am I doing? There's some dude all medieval painting holding a cat, which is funny to me. Apparently that dude is some Polish politician, so I don't know if he was accused of, I don't know, child molestation or whatever. Apparently not, but he's a Polish meme, and so I don't know, that was just some dude. So I ordered the sweater, and it was really cute. It had Winnie the Pooh on it. Blue sweater, Winnie the Pooh, but 2 strips of another picture were taped on top of him. Like it looked like tape. So he was combined with a different bear. So it looked like one bear, but kind of like pieced together. And what do I know what that is? So during NAM, Joe Braga from Pedal Playhouse walks up and says, and it looks cute. I don't know what the other bear is. And Joe goes, that's Pedo Bear. I'm like, what?
Uh-oh.
What is Pedo Bear? So apparently that's some brownie bear that back then was a meme being used with the Nambla something movement. So here's me wearing a pedophile icon on my sweater, but it gets better.
Talking about pedals.
No,
Yeah.
no. Do you know? First of all, I wore this in a video for the Rockman pedal. Luckily, in the video, I'm saying, I don't know what the brown thing is. Can someone tell me? So luckily, I stated clearly that I didn't know. But also, do you know where I was the day before? When she told me? I was on the NAMM floor wearing this when she told me.
Oh, ouch.
But the day before, I was at Disneyland all day wearing Pedo Bear. Yeah. So that I luckily I had a jean
But
jacket.
you didn't get it sorted out, right?
It must have blocked most of it because
you didn't get hauled off.
Front, it's on the front and the back, and they would have tackled me.
Yeah.
That was bad. That was
the guys rolling up on that little yellow Cushman scooter thing.
That one
jackets, right?
One future Sunday rant is going to be know what you wear. Because here's the thing: we look at people and we judge them harshly on the statements they make on their clothing, right? And if it's something political in your language, you would think that they would hopefully know. And then maybe judge them for it, maybe don't. But you know what? When I'm wearing the Polish politician, what do I know? I was in Shanghai getting a foot massage. And we were there with the guys from the company. Kiana was in Shanghai. Kiana's sitting there getting a massage. She looks at my massage lady and she says, butter. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, look at her sweater. And this Chinese lady has a sweater and just says butter. Because she probably thinks it's some really cool English phrase. But it says butter. She doesn't know. So maybe sometimes we might be judged for what we wear, but we're too dumb to know what we wear.
What it was
happened to me
swag from what was that Marlon Brando film?
Last Tango in Paris.
Last Tango in Paris.
Yeah. We were watching a Netflix comedy special. This female comedian, she was hysterical, and she was talking about growing up in America, and she had a Russian dad who really didn't speak English. And she said he shows up at a school function with some random donated shirt that's Budweiser, the king of rears.
Yep. Know what you wear.
She's, mortified, and they get home and she explains it to him. And then he's mortified. He had no idea what he was wearing.
Well, from now on, I will ask the youngins before I wear sweaters like this, and I would actually ask the lady that I work with at the company if there's anything that I should know about.
Hey, man, we're all still learning, aren't we?
I have one
Learn as we go.
I have one with a polar bear. It's a blue sweater polar bear, and there's something written on top of it. Apparently, that's a Polish meme that I don't know about. But anywho, did we want to talk about the videos? Do we have to talk?
Hell
think we
no.
made enough videos about the videos.
Oh, see, I had a friend give me a black T-shirt one time that had a big X on the front of it, and I thought, oh, that's cool, and I wore it, and I was on a motorcycle trip across country. And I stopped at a lunch place, a diner in Kansas City to grab a bite to eat. And some drunk guy was sitting at a booth eating at 2:00 in the afternoon. He looks at me and he starts muttering stuff about what am I doing wearing that shirt and driving a Harley at the same time? And I'm like, huh? Excuse me? Could you explain that? And the waitress ran over to my table and just go, it's okay. It's okay. Just finish your food and go. You don't even have to pay. It's on the house. Just please go. And I'm like, what did I do? And when I left, a couple of days later, I was in a bigger city, and I went by a billboard, and it was the year that Malcolm X movie came out, and the T-shirt was swag for the Malcolm
Denzel.
X movie. Denzel
Yeah.
Washington doing Malcolm X. And I almost got into it with a guy at a diner in Kansas City over, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, and he thought that I was a traitor to the Harley Davidson name by, you know, acknowledging the existence of an important.
I love Spike Lee.
Oh my God. I just went, I wish I'd have known a little more about that, because then I would have.
You probably would have gotten into
You would
it.
have. You would have punched him in the face.
I actually did go, do you want to come over and join me at my table and talk about it? And the waitress like, no. I wanted to know what it was about. And then I figured it out later, and I just thought, I really wish I hadn't let her like diffuse the whole thing, but I didn't, you know. So.
That's wild. Hey, before we move on from the Henning Polish apparel story, Henning, do you have a favorite? A favorite
Sweater?
top? Yeah.
There are so many. There are so many. I mean, I really do like the ones that look like you're not wearing a top, where it's literally just like, I have this Christmas one, which looks like it's a hairy chest and there's nipples and whatever.
Does it
And
say
there's
now,
actually-
now we don our gay apparel on it for the Christmas?
No, there's Christmas stuff. Literally, like I think there's like a Christmas ornament. I think like stuck into the skin, and the Christmas tattoos, and that's pretty horrible.
Is that what you're wearing? Are you wearing one of those on your channel banner, your YouTube channel banner? You're standing. It's like a bare-chested, kind of muscly dude-looking thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Could be. Let me look at that. What am I wearing there? Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
That's the move.
There's that one. It looks like it's just like the shirt is open.
Yeah. You know, when you wear these crazy colorful things, I've never articulated it until now, but in the back of my mind, it reminds me of the Swirl Ibanez universes, the multicolor. It's just so overwhelmingly colorful.
I have one or two of these. Here's the thing. I think I'm stylistically pretty diverse musically. And when I did all these albums, I was in Metal Maniacs, Metal Age, all these big metal magazines all around the world. But I didn't play the game. I didn't do black shirts, spiky thing, let's get some makeup on. I mean, Sebastian Bach did an hour and a half of makeup before he could go to the Rainbow Room. Okay.
Were you short hair or long hair at this point?
At that point, I had cut it off. 2000s, but I cut my hair off. But it was short hair, not bald. And but I never. I mean, I literally just back then, I was completely normal. You know, bought stuff at the Gap. That's what I looked like a normal dude. Yeah. And so here's the thing. Can I do the job? I played every instrument on all of my albums. Okay. I can do the job. I can make music. I can rock. I can metal. But to someone like Sebastian, which always stuck, I'm not rock and roll. I'm not metal because I don't live that lifestyle. So someone who can completely write an album that you sing on from scratch, play every instrument, engineer it, do everything. Doing the actual music doesn't make you metal. You have to actually look the part. So that really stuck with me, that I could just, I didn't fit into these magazines because I wasn't that guy.
Yeah.
So I love it to now when I do tracks for my videos, to do like 7-string mega heavy genty stuff, but then literally wear like a unicorn and just really be the most opposite you can be of the
I
guy
see.
playing metal. I
So
really
you're totally
enjoy
leaning
that.
into that.
Yeah.
You're almost leaning into that rejection. Like, okay, I'm not a metal apparently, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna wear a
I
unicorn
did a
hoodie.
track for an Engel amp for the Founders Edition called One Note Gent, which is in gent, it's all about the rhythm anyway. So whatever
totally.
notes you play down there, they're not really audible as different pitches anyway. So I'm like, okay, let's just go 7-string, do a genty thing. And I'm wearing this huge hoodie, that it's a big blanket that you wear. And that is blood covered. So it's like white with blood on it. And so I wear that. So it looks ridiculous because I look huge and the guitar looks smaller, but I'm genting away. And I look metal because I'm blood covered. I'm genting, but I'm standing there with a cup of coffee and I'm drinking that because I have one hand free, right? So it's super brutal. But I'm just drinking coffee. As much as I can troll the whole I'm not metal, I'm very much leaning into it because you know what? I can do the fucking music. If you think I'm not metal, okay, then I'm not because I don't wear black shirts.
Yeah. Have you seen that that clip? I don't know. It was super huge on social about 5 years ago. It was some Japanese metal band and the drummer's back there in this giant costume. I forget what the animal is or whatever, but total double bass, just like aggressive as hell.
Oh yeah,
and it's that, you know what I'm talking about, Steve?
Yeah,
it's the juxtaposition of whoever that drummer is can play the shit out of that shit, but the visual is the entire opposite. It's like a child's,
he's inside there sweating.
Blast beats and shit.
Yeah, but the thing is, in metal, it's way more about how you are perceived as like your exterior. You got to look. It bugged me about James LaBrie. He's such a nice guy. Shows up in flip flops and shorts, but as soon as the camera's on, it's like you got to be mysterious. You can't give everything. Needs to think. There's some mystique about you. Like he's a family dad, super nice Canadian man.
Right.
But as James LaBrie, singer of Dream Theater, he needs to be this. And
except the weird thing is nobody feels that way about him anymore. I mean, everybody's pushing 60. It's like we can retire that now. Let's just play the music.
The thing is, let it be about the music. For a lot of bands that I very much like, I do not want to know who the people in the band are. I don't care. I just want to listen to the music. I did a video about this in one of my Sunday rants. If you had listened to Metallica's Load, not knowing anything about who the band is, you would have said that's a killer metal album. But knowing that it's Metallica, you're judging where they came from, what they've done
Absolutely.
Now they've lost it, all this bullshit. But if you had the distance to step back and just listen to the music, independent of anything, great music, good stuff.
And yeah, I remember when the last Van Halen album came out, A Different Kind of Truth or whatever. And I challenged myself, like, sit down and listen to this as if it's not Van Halen, because it's never going to be 1978, Van Halen 1. And that was a really fun exercise because, and then especially to think if it was a little bit of a mind, like a little bit of a thought experiment, like, listen to this record and then imagine somebody says, yeah, this is like this new band. And everybody in the band at the time is like 55. And you're like, shit, like the energy in this stuff is intense. Like these guys are killing it. Like who's this band? Like strip away the lineage and the biography and all of that and just listen to it for what it is. Right?
But that's never going to change. I mean, Page Hamilton is like a really stellar artist and he's very progressive. And he also has this real Beatles streak in him that nobody ever sees, but it's there. And he did an album or two where he really let that out. and they were phenomenal records. And all he did was take shit because it didn't sound like Meantime. And I'm like, most well done, you are just you're continually to develop as an artist, and you're working on your craft, you're working on your vocals, you're working on your harmonies, you're working on your structure, you're working on all this stuff. You can just see him trying to grow while all of his audience are going, no, don't do that. I don't want to hear Meantime for the rest of your ever loving bloody days. And he eventually, he had to basically sort of pull back a little bit because the pressure from his diehard fans to not get out of what he does, that's why Helmet was that's why Helmet existed in the first place, because he went this way.
I couldn't be AC/DC, because it's amazing what they've done, but then never to even remotely for one note break out of that very clear mold, it would bore the living crap out of me. For me, it's about the process. Okay, so I with the musicians I've worked with, there's some people who really enjoy the process, the putting the pieces of the puzzle together, the writing, the making it all fit. I love that. When the album's out, then being celebrated for it, that's fun for the first 2 interviews. And then please let me get back in the studio and make more of it. But then the whole, and now you gotta go and rehearse and tour and regurgitate it over and over. It's like, that's not the process. That's a different thing. And it's probably fun. I've never done it. But for me, I'm an arranger. I like arranging and producing. But for some other people, and we get back to Sebastian Bach, the douche, we lovingly call him the douche. For him, all that is icky. All that, the actual making music, that's a means to an end. In the end is, I want to be celebrated and be rock and roll. I want to be on stage and have people cheer me on. I want to be told that I'm something great. And again, that is nice after you've worked on an album for 6 months. For the first 2 interviews, they've listened to it, they ask a specific question about songs, and that's rewarding. But for the first 2 interviews, after interview 50, you're like, please leave me alone. Can I get back in the studio, please?
Well, you mentioned AC/DC, and they own that. And then when you go try to interview them about it, and there's this famous interview where the interviewer said, how do you respond to the accusation that you've made the same album 12 times? And Angus Young goes, that's a bloody lie. We've made the same album 13 times. He's ready for that.
And if they enjoy it, that's great. For me, like I've done prog, rock, and metal, and so in that prog world, I think it was Metal Maniacs, Mike, what's his name? The article said progressive metal's new genius, and I'm like, that's very kind. Okay, thank you. Nice to read. And it was like, if Henning Pauly continues this, Dream Theater can go home. Obviously, also bullshit, but nice to read. But the thing is, you've done a couple of albums that people thought were great in that world. And for me, it was like, why should I continue making these? I know I can do it. Now it's just going through the motions again. Now I want to do something that I'm not good at, because that's how I get good at it. So I want to explore new things. And so when I got back to Germany, I did this one album as on spec, because it was for a sci-fi writer's book to accompany that book. So it was they wrote the lyrics. Okay, great, big prog metal epic concept album. But then I listened to Dio, Best of Dio, and boy was it horrible. Great metal, but Night Light Survive rhymed in every single song. He literally sings about unicorns and rainbows. And not just once. Those lyrics come up a lot.
That's the Dio brand.
And I'm like, you know what? And I listen to this, I'm like, this is horribly lyrically. Like lyrically, this is a complete joke. So I said, let's do it. Let's do that. So we made a list of 150 metal buzzwords. Serpent, fight, fist, brother, father, mother, sword, Babylon,
lightning.
Every word that sounds big in metal. And we did a whole 80s metal homage album. So it's all like, there's Manowar stuff in there, there's Maiden stuff in there. It's all 80s metal. And we literally chained these words together without any meaning. But that's what metal lyrics are. There isn't content. It's listen to
imagery.
Holy Diver is literally not even English language. Right? It isn't. There is no meaning in there. It is words that sound good. Tiger sounds good, right? Ride the tiger.
Right.
Okay. It's like, shiny diamonds. I mean, they sound good.
Yeah, it's the imagery suggesting symbolism.
You have to have strong words in the right key positions within a phrase. So, I mean, once we had two lines consecutively that actually made sense, the rule was the third line has to be completely somewhere else. We have lines like, brothers of the fist united in a lie. I mean, brother, fist, lie. Those are strong words, right?
That's poetry, Henning. That's poetry.
On this night of metal, for metal we will die. But then, okay. So
that's Venom lyrics.
So that kind of made sense, right? But then the next line is, in a lyric twist, we wish you all goodbye.
Nonsense.
Because you had to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is, nobody noticed. The people that enjoy 80s metal, they're like, this is a great album. Some people got that it was a little bit of taking the piss out of metal, while still being a fan, which you can't do. Okay, you can't think metal is silly and still love it.
Yeah.
But I am. Wait a second, Michiel, go to bed. It's 4:30, Michiel. He's in Belgium. Go to bed. So the point is, I did this, and it was very much like production-wise, sounds. I used Soldanos and whatever. So I loved exploring a different arranging side. I mean, what did you do? You put chorus on everything. So I put chorus on everything. I could play these big 80s solos, which you couldn't in Prague. They had to be different kind of solos. But then it was done with that, and with that project called Shadow's Minion, because Shadow's Minion, and Minion was misspelled. It was spelled Mignon, because that's metal. With that project,
Filet Minion.
Let's explore something else. So I did a 70s rock album. And I had a friend of mine go in, I visited him in his studio, and he laid down drums. I said, give me an AC/DC song, go. And he did a whole song, AC/DC type song, but drums only, nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows song form, so he did the whole AC/DC song, and I wrote the complete album over his drum performances. And I said, give me The Who, give me Deep Purple. And so he did all these songs based on that prompt.
Yeah.
And I wrote a whole album on top of it. There was some
that sounds like a rap artist process.
Yep. And there was some Hendrixy stuff. All kind of classic rock. And so I could explore, and I think that's what makes me great on the channel, to come back to that, is I explored classic rock production, lyric writing, because in classic rock it's very different. It's very different. Classic rock songs are not about anything. You have to have key words. It's got to be yo mama, six string, baby, drugs and sex and rock and roll. That's what that is about. In metal, it's not about drugs and sex and rock and roll. In metal, it's about fantasy themes. But in classic rock, you're not really singing about something. I mean, Smoke on the Water is literally singing about the band at a gig. It's all rock and roll. Led Zeppelin doesn't really have very in-depth, clever lyrics. It's baby, 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 baby.
Well, they bridged the gap because then they had Stairway to Heaven, which is total fantasy. You know what I mean? It's getting a little moving towards not quite Dio land, but adjacent, right?
So exploring that lyrically and exploring that sound-wise, because when in the 80s you had certain type of gain and a certain type of amp, what I did for that classic rock album, I was back in Germany. I did what they did back then. Got one amp. I had the Blackheart 100, BH100. And I took the clean channel of that amp, it's a 100-watt amp, and I cranked it. And all I had as my tools was that amp. And what I also did is play standing up. Also, I had
your strap way down.
Not way down, no. but I needed to rock more, and I played the verse which I had written. Right, I had an intro, I had the verse, and what I did is I kept playing when the chorus hit, and a lot of the songs are what happened when that happened. I didn't have anything, so I just kept playing. I'm like, oh, that actually was a cool riff. So when in that prog world, everything is, you take some tweezers, and you go through it, and you fine comb it, and you piece it together. Everything's got to be ultra perfect. For you as a writer and producer, listening to that album is absolutely painful because you've done so much. You've been so deep into the music that you can't hear it stepping back as a song anymore. You're hearing all these little details. So by just keep on playing, oh, you know what, that was fine. By having a bad note, you're lifting your fingers a little bit too early and you've got that open E in there, all this extra crap that they had back in the day, for me, added a sense of not really knowing the song too well. And it's the album that I can listen to and enjoy the most because it's fun, because I didn't go into the detail. I didn't write the riff to death. Sometimes I just improvised and go, oh, that's cool. Let me hope I can do that again for the double. Done. The song was done.
That goes way back to like that take had the vibe. Who gives a rat's ass if you like the G string is flat or you
exactly,
or what was the Led Zeppelin one where Jimmy Page came in too soon after the solo, and you can hear
there's a telephone ringing in the crunge. You can hear a telephone ringing.
You can hear Dazed and Confused, and coming out of the solo back into the rhythm part, Page comes in too soon. Bonham is putting extra fills in to take up the time because he's got to come around the orbit one more time, and you can hear Plant way in the background going, no.
I mean, listen to Black Dog. Page does not understand the eighth note shift in that. That's an eighth note shift of the same. He doesn't understand that because when it comes around into the main riff again, he doesn't leave that eighth note space that's supposed to be there. He skips that note. And that's leading to the rest of the band, who's grooving nicely in halftime, to have to catch up to him.
Yeah.
That is an absolutely horrible performance, showing you that the guy didn't understand his own riff, which is brilliant if you play it right, which he didn't on the recording. And the band has to all of a sudden catch up.
Yeah, I actually know that that riff, this will explain it, is actually a John Paul Jones riff. So
he really didn't get it.
Yeah, he really didn't get it.
Because when you go back to the original riff, you have to leave 1/8 note space before you're starting it. But he doesn't. and he goes in immediately, and you can totally hear that the rest of the band is quickly speeding up to catch up to him. And look, they left it. And is anyone going to say Black Dog's a bad song, or nobody cared about it? No, I don't have a Black Dog. So for me, that album taught me completely different things. And I love that. And then if I go into the next, I did a whole punk album. Do I like punk? No. Do I understand it now a lot better? Do I now have an appreciation for these bands? Absolutely. So for me, going and doing the whole thing of prog metal over and over and over and over absolutely wasn't challenging me. I have a whole solo piano album. Which teaches me different things as an arranger.
Are you now these last 3 projects that you described, the metal send up, the classic rock send up, did these come out under your own name?
Oh, they didn't come out.
You just made them.
The metal one came out. The classic one, nope. The punk one, nope. No, I don't release albums anymore. Because why?
Yeah.
I mean,
are you doing sessions anymore?
Nope.
So the channel is the main thing.
Yeah, it's going to sound super arrogant, and it probably is, but I love the process. We've covered that. Getting the album out, even just like, album art, let's talk to the artist and whatever, and then dealing with the label and putting it on, and even just the half hour that it would take to go to DistroKid and upload it as an album. To what end? So that it ends up on Spotify and all these things, so that I can't get paid, so that they have more stuff people could potentially listen to, however many clicks it is. Let it be 100 clicks. I don't give a shit. But that gives them a platform to be more of a billionaire, while I get nothing because I only get 100 plays or whatever it is. It could be 1 billion plays. I don't care.
When you could be on your own channel and get shit sideways for saying what you really think about the gear that you really check out. Yeah.
I'm just not going to release my music. I like making it, but for a lot of bands, the reward is people hearing their music, right? And getting some gratification of saying, oh, this is a great song. We absolutely love that. And being emotionally rewarded for the work you've done. Oh, I like your music. And the arrogant bit is, I've been there. I've done it. I've done loads of albums. I've had people tell me, you're good at that. I don't have to hear it again. It's always nice, but I don't need that as a driving force as a musician in my life anymore. So I make these albums and I put them on my hard drive and I enjoy them. That's it. Because I'm not going to play that Spotify game. I don't want people to listen to my music for free, because that's, people think music is a right now. It's like, music should be free. And if you don't tour, you don't make any money. I've got no merch, I got no touring. So why should I give people my music for free? I'd rather just not share it. No, that's very arrogant, but I don't want Mr. Spotify to make money off of my back while I don't make anything. So I love what Steven just said. I love putting these songs, and I have put these songs in videos. I go and strip the guitars, re-record the guitars. If I have an amp that's a classic rocky amp, I go to the classic rock album and redo one of these. I've redone some of the metal album. I've redone some of the albums that were out. If I can get to a session, but then I have to relearn everything, which could also be fun and maybe improve the song. I've taken songs from the album with James LaBrie and straightened them out, got rid of the 7/8 bars and made it simpler. It's all me learning stuff, and
it's no longer progressive rock. It's regressive rock. We're playing everything in 4. Be happy.
And then people say, oh, you're too old, you don't know how to gent. Well, then I try to, do some of that. I try to not be stagnant, and I like to just have a challenge. And new musical styles are a challenge. But then, of course, the channel brought completely different challenges.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Learning editing, making, learning about all this video gear, building the video systems, and the editing side of it, how to do thumbnails. I had to learn that. A lot of that's not as much fun as recording music.
Are you doing all of your own editing still at this point?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're still completely in-house.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because I'm a control freak. I wouldn't. There's one person, well, let's say two people in the world that I trust with doing things for me that usually I would want to have in control. So the one person is in the chat, that's Michiel. When it comes to 42 Gear Street and organizational things, I have learned to let go after years of working with him, because I know he will do things better than I can. And for some other things, while she was here, Valeria, you might have seen her in chat somewhere. She's very, very busy in our community, Valeria Soto. I know her well enough that I can, task her with certain things. I know they will get done the right way. But at the point where I uploaded the stuff to be edited and explain to an editor what I want from the edit, and then also get it back and have to look at the whole thing, that's more time than it would take me to edit the video. And the editing is also important as a balance, because I'm going to say a good half of my time is administrative office work.
Okay.
Emails, chats, talking to brands.
Steve's nodding.
Yeah. Talking to Steve, talking to all these people from the industry, getting the job, getting the deal. And then when I have to be available, when someone writes me on Instagram, Facebook, email, you can't let them wait, because it might be a paid gig. So you got to respond.
Sure.
So while I'm editing, I'll get pulled back in every 3 minutes into something else, and then FaceTime chats and whatever, Zooms. This is often people think we play guitars. I play guitar when the camera is running. That's it. That is when I hold a guitar.
Okay.
And so that's part of it. But then another part of it is new gear comes in and I test it. Oftentimes, I don't, because what do I really need to test about a 3-knob overdrive? I mean, I can throw that on the table and not know what it does, but I still know what it does, right? And then you react to the sounds. Now, something like a Deliverance, knowing what the two channels do, knowing why it's a plus now, that requires some communication. That requires a little bit of dialing it in, finding out, oh, this is actually not just a brutal rock thing. Like this is an insane clean. Okay, now we need to highlight that. But that technically, you can find that out in 10 minutes.
Sure.
I would like to spend time with the amp and maybe record something, all that. But if you don't, I could still show that amp because I'm sitting next to it. I'm presenting it, not in that Deliverance video. That was a little bit special. But
that was very.
Yeah, I was tasked to do that.
That was
I loved that. I loved that. Somebody needed to do that.
Because now that was driven by, and what we're really sort of represented that we're coming together to talk about, that was driven by the way these videos generally roll out and the way manufacturers generally try to do this big onslaught on the internet to every possible outlet when a new product comes out. And everybody's going to say pretty much more or less the same thing about it and make a little composition and then play the composition and then zoom in and make pretty pictures and all of that. And you're like, when I saw Henning do the Soldano overdrive pedal that was supposed to be, this is supposed to be the like this SLO 100. Let's find out. And he's measuring the diameter of the knobs. And I just went, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Because that's exactly, and this is why we're friends, and this is why we do these things off the wall like that, because it needs to be done that way. It needs to be done. A thing like that needs to be done. A presentation like that needs to happen, because
someone needs to do it. I don't agree that when everyone does these videos, it's an issue, because people are like, oh, everyone's got the same video. Well, first of all, nobody forces you to watch it. And what a great world we live in, where you have, let's say, 20 videos on the new pedal, where you can pick a player that plays the style you like in a presentation that you enjoy, and you can watch that guy. And then you can watch someone else doing it in a different way. You get different information about the pedal, because all of a sudden they're sending it into a deluxe reverb or whatever. And the other guy tries to meddle with it, even though it's not a metal pedal.
Right, but after 3 or 4 of those, you've pretty much done that.
Yeah, but nobody says you have to watch all of them. People like, oh, I can't watch YouTube today because all these guitar channels are showing the same pedal. Because there's nothing else on YouTube? Because you've watched my back catalog. Who says you can't go back 2 weeks and watch a video I did 2 weeks ago? I mean, complaining about everyone's got the new Fender guitar today. Go outside, take a walk. Have you tried masturbating? I mean, there are fun things you can do with your time that are not watching guitar videos. If complaining about everyone's got the same product today is the biggest of your problems, we live in a beautiful world, okay? That is just so stupid. So I really like that happens, because it shows companies understanding the value of YouTube. And look, nobody complained about ads, because back in the day, Fender took out an ad, and it was the same ad, the same presentation, the same marketing bullshit in every magazine. Did someone complain about, oh, this new Fender ad is in every magazine? Nobody did, because that's how it was done. Now, the same ad is on every channel, but it's not the same ad. It's different evaluation, different opinions, different sounds. So it's a much better world we live in, because you've got honest ads with different opinions. How in the world is that negative? I think it's an absolute positive. And
they're free.
And nobody says you have to watch them all. I think people assume you have to watch them all. So if you like, Michael Nielsen and Pete Thorne, because they're the guys that play the, kick-ass 80s stuff, then you watch them. If you want to watch someone who doesn't know about gear but fiddles with knobs, you watch me. But so that's, you have options. But yeah, I knew the Soldano versus the pedal had to be done. And I wanted to do it in a very silly way, because I was like, most people probably do that. And then I still did the video of comparing the amp to the pedal. Did you see the new one I did for the SLO Plus, I think it's called? It's the dual channel one.
Mm-mm.
Okay. It is a video about the pedal, but the first 5 minutes, I'm talking about SLO. And I said, so they sent me this thing. I don't know what's got to do. They said, can you do a video about SLO? I'm like, okay. Oh God, wait. I have to look it up now. It's called symmetrical lupoid onychodystrophy. And it is a disease in dogs where the claws are very brittle and break off. So our dog has that. And I'm sitting there video. I'm like, I don't know why they're paying me to talk about symmetrical lupoid onychodystrophy, but let's talk about it. I'm showing pictures of broken off claws. I'm talking about vet bills and the medication. And we actually putting like plastic caps on them so they don't break off. But of course, they're glittery pink. And so the first 5 minutes, I talk about symmetrical loopoid oligodystrophy, and they're saying they also sent me this pedal. I don't know why, but let's play this. So I try to be trolly in that way. Some people get the humor, some people don't. It's the internet. What can you do?
Right.
But yeah, I do agree. You can't do you can't do it the same way every time. However, I also like it when I don't have to work very hard and do an ASMR video for an amp. When it's literally just like, okay, I got this amp. Let me show you what it can do. Because I think we have ways of making you hear the amp. You know what I mean? I have a good setup. Like what I do with amps now, I send it into a Dice 212. I mic it with a 57. I mic it with a very high-end AEA ribbon mic. I know how to mic amps. I now have a stereo ribbon mic from AEA, the R88A. That's a lot of A's to say.
Do that again 5 times.
The AAR88A, the AAR88A, the AAR88A, the AAR88A, the AAR88A.
Hey, man.
And that actually, at a distance, captures the room sound perfectly. You mix that in. I think I can now show amps the way that you would experience them in the room.
That's a big thing for me. But I'm gonna really enjoy hearing you do the GPDIIR.
that's call it Frank or something. Come on. That's a lot. But yeah, I think I can present an amp well in terms of the sound. I go through everything. I will put different guitars on it because, if you show the deliverance and you don't put a Strat on that clean channel, I think you're doing it a disservice. But you got to go into something else. And for some people, you need to put a 7-string on there. So I do all that. So is it original? Maybe not. Is it very clever like the ASMR thing? No. But I think the video still, I have a way of giving a video a lot of valuable information so that people can make an informed buying decision. Will this get a lot of clicks? Hell no. But in the end, I always ask companies, what do you want? Do you want clicks and reach and lots of people to know about your product, or do you want to actually sell it? Because clicks and reach you get with shorts, you get with a 5-minute video. A 45-minute video about an amp isn't going to get you clicks. It is going to make the people who watch that much more likely to buy it than anything else, because they'll likely come to a 45-minute video because they're already interested enough to buy it. So now they have questions. Does the effects loop work? Does it work with the Strat? How does it sound for that style? And if I can answer those questions.
How easy it to blow it up.
Which brings us to, I don't know. Someone just asked, did we talk about this? That we started talking about me getting into it and starting to buy some pedals after all these albums to get these sounds. So I was just getting into amps and pedals. I bought the Dynacomp when I started making those videos. I had not played the world stages for 20 years with big amps. Okay, I had done albums, I've done other stuff, but not massive tube amp knowledge. And so a lot of that knowledge came throughout the years of working with companies. The first fuzz I reviewed was, first of all, a horrible fuzz. It was a fuzz phase clone from Joyo with an octave in it and a bad one. But I had never played a fuzz. So I treated it like, this has to sound like an overdrive. And I just didn't get it. I literally didn't get that. That's actually what it was supposed to sound like.
Right.
So that is just not knowing. I had a conversation with Glenn Fricker today because, we cannot all know everything. So I had the same opinion about 800s that he had, that they sounded like bees in a box, totally horrible, no low end, which obviously is the biggest joke. Why would you possibly, if you know your shit, think that an 800 doesn't have low end? So he just made a video about the Tube Workshop Lulus amp, which is a 800 on steroids, beautiful amp. And in the whole video said that's the amp Marshall could never make, and the only way 800s would sound like that is if people went and brought them to modders, and the only way people played these 800s in the 80s was because they were modded, because he clearly only worked with people that took the gain down. And Glenn, with his experience, which he has, was missing a bit of experience. He was missing the bit of information that a bright cap is a thing. So how do I know about it? I didn't. I got an 800 from Marshall years ago because it's good to have on the amp wall. And it is. And then Dave Friedman, you might be familiar with him. He knows something about amps. He had to explain to me because I'm like, this sounds horrible. It's like all this top end and there's no, and he's like, yeah, you literally can't take the gain down. Might as well just rip the knob off. I mean, what? And I might ask you about that, Stephen. What in the world is even the idea of a bright cap? Why even put this in?
Okay, well, first of all, the 800. That was Marshall's first attempt to try to catch up to what was going on in the amp modding world. Marshall, for the longest time, didn't do anything because Jim Marshall didn't want to change anything. You don't mess with the working formula. And the JCM 800 really put a delineation between the old Marshalls and the new Marshalls, and why people started glomming onto old Marshalls because they sounded better than new Marshalls. And the old one was everything they made before the 800, and the new Marshalls was the 800, which if you played it the way you did a four-holer, it was a totally different experience, and had this knob that you only turned it one way. You had to turn it to the point where it started to sound usable and more gain than probably a lot of regular Marshall people were used to using. And that led to the whole bees in the bottle thing. That amp single-handedly created the phrase, the bees in the bottle sound.
But Scott is saying, rightfully so, the JMP is the same thing, which is why the new modified by Marshall 1959 Plexi.
No, it's not. It's not the same thing because the JM,
but it has a bright cap.
It does not have two parallel triodes. It takes it takes the dark channel and turns it into something else and puts it after the bright channel, and it's another stage of gain. It's a completely different animal on the front end. On the back end, not so much difference, although they did change the transformer design a little bit to make it easier and cheaper to produce, and so that was thinner sounding. But
the bright cap is still there on the bright channel of a JMP.
Yes, but it hasn't got as much gain after the bright.
On the new one, on the modified one, the one thing that they modified was you can turn the bright cap off, which makes that bright channel so much more usable because it doesn't have that super top end. But
yeah, but the whole point is that you turn it up to the point where the bright cap is not just restoring high frequencies that are lost, it's setting a timbre. As you turn it up, it gets the fullness and the mid-range come up underneath the brightness of the bright cap. And this has been a thing for a very long time, that you just turn it up to where the timbre starts to balance out, where the high end is more commensurate with the mids and the lows. But you can make it brighter by turning the gain down and then turning the amp up louder, which you used to be able to do because you could just play those things all the way out. And if it was really bright, it was okay because you turn the guitar volume down and that would make the guitar darker. So that served a purpose too. You basically had to know that you don't just turn the knobs on the amp, you also turn the knobs on the guitar. And once that sort of ethos of playing guitar faded into the background, then where to set that first gain stage, or whether the bright cap was big enough or too big or whatever, that started to become a thing as a result of more people just wanting the amp to do everything, and all you do with the guitar is just turn it up. And then
that makes sense,
and
because
then
you
Eddie
wouldn't have been able to.
Eddie comes along and he takes he takes the treble control off the guitar, and it's got is a volume control, and it's all the way up. And there's all these kinds of players that come into their own at the time this amplifier sort of dynamic is shifting, and there's going to be the one guy that figures out how to make it work, and then everybody goes, oh, he figured out how to make it work, let's go figure out what he does. And then of course what he said he did and what he actually did were two different things. He said I have a Variac and I turned it up, which he actually turned it down, which was why would I bitch about that? It was a boon for us, my repair shop, because we were like replacing power transformers now, like on a weekly basis, where it was like every couple of months before. So
need a battery.
Oh, pit stop.
So
that's fascinating, Steve.
There's all this, the reality. This is why we're actually all talking today, was because there's a reality that's in the undercurrent of all this. And then there's everybody's perception year after year after year, reading regurgitated stories that change their point of view and add information that isn't real or subtract information that is real. And then we find there was a lot of amplifiers that got modded between the 70s and the 90s. Shit tons of amplifiers got modded, and that became a thing unto itself. Interestingly, in the late 80s, I started making money on modifying amplifiers.
Unmodifying, okay.
In fact, Lee Jackson was doing this mod that he basically learned from Paul Rivera when he worked for Rivera. He turned that into a Marshall mod, a whole thing. There was several different things that got done inside this amp. The gain stain added another some capacitors and some resistors, and the power supply was beefed up a little bit with bigger filter caps and this and that. A bunch of things all happened at the same time, and you paid $350 for that. And you didn't go to him and say, I want a little more timbre, or no. It was like you went and got the Lee Jackson mod, and it was $350, and it was not returnable and not refundable. You're coming to me, pay me $350 to do this to your amp. And then after that's done, I don't want to hear from you. That was pretty much his whole presentation. And if anybody didn't like it, he would say, well, then you just have to take it out and start all over again. But I don't do that, because I only do this mod. You understand? I'm not here to tailor anything to your personal taste. I'm just selling you my little product. And if you don't like it after you get it, not my problem. Sorry. There's this guy at Valley Arts named Steve. If you go talk to him, he'll take it out for you. Oh, really? Oh, what's that going to cost? $350.
Good times.
So once every couple of months, I would get a Lee Jackson to undo. And then once I did that, I'm like, okay, well, now it's back to the way it was. So can you kind of put it halfway there? No, I don't do that. I only put them back to stock.
All these poor people trying to get the amp they wanted. What I told Glenn today, I said, what he said about the 800, that Marshall could never make an amp that had the balls. And I said, Glenn, I thought the same thing, because I was working with bands, mixing them live on stage here. And because it was a small stage, they took everything down and they tried to get the gain back up with an overdrive. But the problem is, at that point, the amp had lost its balls. And me as a mix engineer had these Marshalls on stage that sounded horrible. So for me, I had the exact same opinion. So he wasn't wrong, But he was pretty wrong in what he said in that Lulus video, saying Marshall made these amps that sounded thin. And that I said, Glenn, an 800 is one of the biggest sounding, ballsiest low-end amps that I know, in a way that almost no other amp can rival. But I had exactly the same opinion you had. So he went into that video speaking from experience, but he was missing some experience with an actual 800, and Dave Friedman saying, crank the shit out of it. So was he wrong? Yes, he was, but can he be faulted for it? I don't think so. So it took a friend to call him today and say, Glenn, you were absolutely spreading misinformation in that video, but I spread that misinformation before. So he's like, well, then that's a great video to make. Marshall should send me an 800 and I'll make the video like, oh my God, was I wrong about the 800? Which makes, that's a great video. Because Glenn is the guy who will absolutely say he was wrong about stuff when he was wrong about stuff. He is wrong about many things that he isn't admitting yet, tone wood, pickups, whatever. But he will absolutely do that. And but the point is, I didn't know that either. And I didn't know that the fuzz was sounding like this. And so people on the internet, they get on your case like, how can you not know that? You know what? I know probably 7,000 things that you don't know. And 8,000 other things that I'm like, can you tell me the mode of a flat 7? Is that a major 7? Is that Lydian? If you're going modal interchange, can you what is the chord scale voicing for that? And when you're doing a drop 2 and 4 voicing for brass, where you're gonna put the trumpet, that shit I know. So you cannot possibly know everything, and people will get on other people's case when they don't know something. But within your bubble, it's very clear that everyone should know that.
There's a thing that happens in music where music goes through these evolutions and then they go back to roots. Blues comes back, 70s rock come back, 80s, whatever. These things recycle. And the same thing happens with gear. And the interesting thing about it is the gear cycle is different than the musical style cycle. So a piece of gear that was bad or irrelevant or problematic at one point can find its way to be valid or different or new and forward thinking in the context of a different musical phase. That's what I see going on. And so I would look at this and I go, well, why is the modding Marshalls all coming back? Well, because it's being observed and experienced by a whole different group of people that didn't experience in the first go round, and in an entirely different context. So,
but now we're meeting two worlds. We're meeting modded Marshalls are coming back at 100 watts. Yet now we live in a time where we need to play quietly.
Right.
So that those two haven't been that widespreadly. Wait, what? I did some kind of thing. Wait, zoom out.
It's just
you hit the button.
You're magic.
No. When you do this, it zooms in.
Oh.
Now it zooms out, but it zooms out too far.
Oh.
So, okay. Now we live in a time where you need to tame amps for venues at home. But if the modded Marshall at 100 watt are coming back, we've got these two things that I think haven't been hitting each other until now, because putting amps into load boxes, all good, but usually amps with a master volume. So if I put my 120 watt, 180 watt Engel into a load box, that master would never be even at noon. Because why? It's a master volume amp. It sounds great wherever that master volume is set. If I don't need it in my cab, I can absolutely have that at 9 o'clock and I'm fine. But now with these modded Marshalls that don't have master volumes, all of a sudden these two worlds collide. Of now we live in a world where you have to attenuate, but also you have these loud amps that used to be cranked.
And not only that, but the master volume is taking on a new significance because now you can balance how much you want the power amp distortion to blend with the preamp distortion that you obtain by having the master volume set a certain way. So now there's a new sort of in-between dynamic that was actually there before, but people didn't explore it before because they didn't need to. Now we do. And that's what you were saying, that now that we have to pay attention to that, now that volume control issue on live stages is a really big priority, you have to manage that. And in the bargain, you also get this thing where, hey, if I do a little of this and a little of this and a little of that, I got a whole new blend that nobody really thought. It was always there, available for you if you wanted it, but nobody really thought about doing it that way. This goes back to using the tools, using the old tools a new way now. And that because
of great tools like the Freyet Power Station, you have the ability to to not experience the volume of the amp, the dangerous volume of the amp that would kill you in the room, you don't experience. So you are a little bit not responsible with that. Let's put it that way. And what I've said in videos about the power stations, this allows you to dial in the amp at exactly where you want it, and then make it as loud or quiet as you want it. So you got best of both worlds. Not knowing, and we never, and this is actually, how we talked about the power station when we talked, but we never touched on that possibly where you would want an amp with 100 watts and you want to, dime it, well, that it might not be so good for the amp, whether it's on a load box or not. I mean, this is, I think, what people misunderstood about the video where I said I blew up the Marshall. I didn't make it clear enough. I didn't say the load box heard it, but I could have heard the load box with it very easily. It was fine after 2 or 3 hours at full blast. If the load box was cooking, you could have cooked eggs on it. You could have cooked eggs on the amp. The load box was fine. We measured it. The load was still intact. And that's why it also didn't break the amp, because the load was still intact. But having it on there made it so much easier for me to run this amp at its full blast because I didn't notice. I didn't hear it in the amp. I mean, in the room, if we say take some breaks, which is the main idea, you crank an amp that much, take a break once in a while, let it cool down. If I were to play it in the room, I would want to take breaks, because who can be in a room with the crank Marshall for more than 5 seconds, right? So you would have had, in a studio situation, you would have taken breaks. With a load box, you don't. So they are conveniently misleading you to think everything's fine, when maybe a break would be a good idea for the load box and for the amp.
There's those kind of people. And then there's the people that go, I don't understand this. Everything is getting hot now. What's the deal? Well, that's really what prompted my response video to you, was not that you did anything wrong or said anything wrong. My goal was to flesh out this larger picture, which is the side that we see from the end users, which is the fan sucks because I can hear it. The heat sucks because I can feel it. Can you turn off the fan? Yeah. Well, can you turn down the heat? Yeah. Turn back on the fan. And then why is my amp getting hotter? And then now I can hear this ghostly buzzing inside of my amp. That's being my amp being damaged by the attenuator. No, that's the attenuator allowing you to hear a thing that you never experienced before. It's always been there. You just never heard it. Now you do. And this is where it gets sticky, and no matter how much you try to educate, people about what's going on. They're kind of experiencing this at a much faster pace than the manufacturers that are putting this stuff out into their hands and trying to explain, do explainer videos here, do this, and there's a warning in the manual, don't let it get too hot, use ventilation, blah blah blah. I don't like the fan, it keeps my baby awake at night. What are you doing putting the power station in the baby crib in the first place? It can get really nutty really quick.
There's still so many misconceptions about load boxes. That's why Guillaume wrote to me, like, what the fuck did you do? People are writing to me. And he's like, now I'm gonna have to go through these comments. And like, look, I didn't say anything, negative at all about Captain X or whatever. It's like, yeah, but we've worked so hard for people to understand what these do, and now they're afraid again. I'm like, yeah, but that's because people still are idiots about it. Isn't it the third law of thermodynamics? Like, energy always stays the same, just in different states. So you're pushing that energy, and this is how I explain load boxes. I'm like, well, instead of turning it into volume, it's turning it into heat.
It's the conservation of energy. It just turns.
That's what I always explain. That's what a load box does, which is why they're usually heavy and bigger, and they've got all these cooling things, because it's, instead of making it loud, it's making it warm. That energy needs to go somewhere. The amp is still putting out the energy, but it needs to be turned into something.
Joe, what was the gun comment that I used that I forgot that you remembered?
A gun comment?
Was it the night that we shot that video?
Yeah, when we were fleshing it out.
You said something along the lines of handing people an attenuator is basically handing them a gun. It was something along those lines.
To shoot themselves with.
Yeah.
So, apparently we still need to explain to people, but honestly, what I didn't know, and why in the world would I know that? People get on my case, how didn't you know that a 100-watt amp puts up more than 100 watts? I'm sorry, it says 100 watt on that thing. I'm not an electromagnetic tactician, whatever you are, with the filaments and
neither are the end
soldering.
users. So how do you explain to them that, okay, there is the kind of watts that is a conversion of power that is supposed to dissipate into the air, and then there's the kind of watts that the amplifier is rated at. So if an amp says 100 watts on it, it's because it produces 100 watts under XXX conditions.
But how is the guitar player who does this for a living, how am I supposed to know that? And look, I'm not.
They don't know, and this has been a boon and a boondoggle for manufacturers since the days of the early '60s. Kids looking in a Sears catalog and going, I want to get that amp because it puts out 80 watts. And then you get it in this little tiny thing with an 8-inch speaker in it, and it actually puts out 10 watts. But they said in the catalog it's 80. Well, okay, read the whole little blurb about the amplifier. It's 10 watts RMS, it's 20 watts peak, and it's 80 watts peak music power, instantaneous peak music power, which means that as soon as your pick tacks the string, there's this instantaneous peak that you don't even actually hear, but it could be a big enough amplitude to hit the 80 watt tick for a microsecond. And this was all amplifier manufacturers, stereo manufacturers, guitar amp manufacturers, and government agencies all arguing about what is it that we can really tell consumers about this and compete with each other without doing anything illegal. So there's never going to be a solution to that, because there was also in the 70s and 80s, there was this thing about, well, British watts are more than American watts. And this is all just a tacit misunderstanding about what all this really means. And all it really means is, like, if you're playing clean, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing loud, 100 watts is 100 watts. If you're playing the amount of power that the amplifier will put out playing clean will closely resemble what the number on the front of the amp says it's supposed to do.
And the question is everyone treating it that way, or is it with different companies? They interpret it differently. I'm starting to believe that none of these things can literally tell us anything. There's no norm.
That's exactly right. And that's the old debate is that they're really talking about things that don't really mean anything substantial to the end user. The only thing that you can bank on is that 2 EL34s generally put out 40 to 60 watts. 2 6L6s generally do 40 to 60 watts, and I'm talking about clean power. And 4 of those do approximately twice much. Done. That's why the amplifiers say 50 and 100 or 60 and 120, because that's the actual clean power that they can produce. That's actually the tubes designed to operate the way they were designed by the engineers who designed those tubes to operate, and all of that operational information is in the data sheet for the tube. And that doesn't mean crap to the guy who
it's
car into it, crashing away.
It's different interpretations because, for example, when I see it says this load box can take 100 watts, that can mean it can take 100 watt amp at clean volume, right? But it could also mean that, we checked it out with cranked 100 watt amps, and it can actually take the output of a cranked 100 watt amp, so that when I read 100 and 100, it matches. Because I asked Guillaume, and he said, no, when it says 100 watt on our Captor X, we mean 100 watt, even if you crank the amp. So within different companies, this can be interpreted differently. So some company might write 100 watts if the amp's clean, but careful if you go further. Another company writes 100 watts and says, no, we checked this with more. And then when I see 100 watt on amp, you know what I always think, or also thought, that if it says 100 watt on the amp, that's what it outputs. I thought that's also how much it takes out of the socket. I thought it pulls 100 watts.
Right.
Because where do you know watts from? If you are this kind of guy, you know it from your TV.
Yeah, the end user was never meant to know that. That was only stuff for regulatory shit, for engineers to and regulatory agencies to be able to say, okay, this is this.
So
that
it would have been much better if
the end user information.
Would have been much better if the companies had called their amps the big one, the medium one, and the little one.
And that's pretty much right. So, for example, our attenuators are rated at 150 to 200 watts. 150 watts at 8 ohms and 200 watts at 2, 4, and 16. Okay. And we say continuous. And that is meant to imply that whatever kind of power that you're talking about, if it's really distorted power, it's going to be more than the number on the front of the amp. So the assumption there is that the reactive load that's in the power station is designed to handle 200 watts continuous. What does that mean? It means that it will turn 200 watts into heat comfortably for an extended period of time, couple hours. With more ventilation, you might be able to do a little more, but it's just sort of like a guideline. So if you're playing the amp clean and it's a 200 watt amp, you can plug it into the power station. If you're playing the amp really dirty and it's a 100 watt amp and you could push it into square wave and get it into 140 or 150 square wave watts, it'll handle that too. But if you're trying to make an attenuator into a smaller package like the Captor X, you're going to want to, and you're in a price point that you want to sell it at this price point, an attractive price, then something's got to give. You have to put a limit there somewhere, and that limit is 100 watts max. It's 100 watts max. That's all it could take. Don't put any more than 100 in there. So there are reasons why all these things are stated the way they are. And And then there's the manufacturers that will call an amp a 100-watt amp because it's got 4 tubes, but it doesn't do anywhere near 100 watts clean. It'll be more like 60 or 65 or 70. So manufacturers will do that so that they can get more warranty lifetime out of the tubes before they fail. So everybody is playing these little games, and there isn't any industry standard that everybody is required to meet. It's
You know that companies have, I think, 50 or 60 watt amps that they are advertising as 40, because I don't remember why, but I think it could be that they have
40 watts clean, and if you push it really hard, you can get another 20% out.
Yeah, but it could be that they build a great amp and it has actually 60 watts, but they're actually saying this is our 40-watt amp, so that their 50-watt amp still ends up at a different price point. Otherwise, you're competing internally. So they might have made a great combo that actually realistically is at about 60 watts, but they're saying this is our 40-watt amp. I know one company that has told me that. So you're a dirty liar. Now we know it.
No, we purposely say our 50-watt amp, when we say it's 50, it's doing 50. It's not doing 35. When we say it's doing 60, it's doing 60. The delivering 60 will do 60 all day long clean. And the reason we do that is so it used to be because why is this amp so much louder than my X other brand that is the same power output? Because it's not the same power output. Well, it's got 2 tubes in it. It's got 2 EL34s, so they should be the same, right? Well, no, not necessarily. And that was kind of our way of saying we're actually delivering to you what we're claiming, where the other company is telling you what they think you understand and telling it the way they believe that you understand it. So we're not really trying to mislead the consumer. We're just trying to speak them into them in the language that they understand. And
I think we've established that they don't understand any language, and they is also this guy. Basil just asked something that everyone's wondering about. If tube watts are different than solid state watts. So I think there's a technical explanation which you're going to give us, but when I see 30 watts on a solid state amp, I'm pretty sure that in the room, the 30-watt tube amp will feel bigger and louder, even though they both say 30 watts on it. So I think that's why people say tube watts are more powerful, because they might be perceived that way. But I mean, what's the deal with that? Because I think the common understanding is 30 watt solid state is not as loud as 30 watts tube.
Okay, here's what's going on. And Joe McGraw has pointed out that put a 100-watt solid state amp up against a 100-watt tube amp, big difference. Okay, this is how we made our initial big splash when the 2150 power amp first came out. It was 100 watts a side, 4 rack space power amp with 4 6550s in it, 2 per channel, 100 watts per channel. Right off the bat. Wait a minute. It's only got 2 tubes per channel. How is it doing 100 watts? Only 4 tube amps can do 100 watts. No, read the data sheet for 6550s. I know you're not going to do that because you don't understand it, but that's the way it works. So what I would say is, does your bass player in your band have an SVT? Yeah, it's a big, heavy thing. Okay, how many power tubes is in it? I don't know. Okay, it's got 6. And it's a 300-watt amp. Okay, so divide the number of tubes by the power that the amp is stated, and what do you get? Oh, sounds kind of like about 100 watts a pair. Why do you think Ampeg is saying that? Loudest bass amp on the planet, right? Yeah. Okay. It was designed exactly by the book, by the data sheet that was provided for 6550s. The same way our 292 power amp, the same way the PS100, and a number of other designs that we've done with a pair of tubes where the power is more like in the 80 to 100 watt range. That's one thing that is sort of relevant, sort of not so relevant to this particular discussion. What we're talking about is why a 100-watt solid-state amp seems to be wimpy compared to a 100-watt tube amp. So having said that about the 2150, so we go put the 2150 in a rack in Bradshaw's shop. And it's Lukather's rack, and he's got the VH400 solid-state power amp that he and Eddie are using. 400 watts a channel. Yeah, it's only 400 watts at 4 ohms, by the way. And because the impedance selector on a tube amp is adjustable, you can set it to always be 100 watts regardless of the impedance. On a solid state amp, you don't have an impedance selector. It's at an optimum power at the optimum impedance. So it's more power at low numbers, 4, 2, 4, and so on. The middle boost in power at 8. Actually, the other way around. It's the most power at 4 ohms. The power drops about 20 or 30% at 8, and then it drops another 20 or 30% at 16. So it's impedance dependent. That's number one. So what we did was we went and put in an amp that we knew would do 100 watts dead nuts aside, regardless of what speaker cabins you plugged it into, because you'd set the impedance switches on the back. And then when you listen to that next to a VH400, it would stop it. How could that little 100 watt a channel amp do that? Part of it is the tube power conversion thing that I just discussed. The other part of it is tubes are allowed to get into their distortion region. We like the sound of that. It sounds good. A solid state amp, when you push it into distortion, it sounds bad. It immediately lets you know, don't do that. That sounds like ass. You don't want to hear that. So solid state amplifiers tend to have much more output power than you need because you do not want to hear them in the distortion mode. But because you've got tubes and transformers and speakers and they all kind of interact with each other, you get the sensation that it's much more powerful than it is, even if it isn't technically louder. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in your hands. Things are happening. On a solid state amp, the power supply is locked down. The output impedance is locked down. Everything that the speaker is doing that's when it's connected to a tube power amp, it doesn't do when it's connected to a solid state power amp. The solid state power amp is controlling the behavior of the speaker and making it less exciting to listen to. So even if they were the identical volume, a person playing through the tube one is going to go, oh, that just made the hair on my arm stand up. You don't even know why. It just, hey, that stomped it. Just like you said, I blew the amp up. You didn't blow the amp up. You just popped a tube. But everybody says, I was just doing the most amazing solo of my life when I blew my amp up. Well, you know, rockets didn't shoot out of the back of your amp. It just blew a fuse. But that's the way people describe the sensation of listening to one amp, one kind of style of power output delivery versus another delivery system. They behave differently. And because the tube ones behave the way we're used to having them behave, which is exciting and warm sounding, and when they are distorting, it's musical, there's 3 things in favor of the tube amp that the solid state amp can't do. And then another thing I like to say is, think of it this way. What if the solid state amp had come out before the tube amp? What if that was the technology that came up first and then that got supplanted by tube technology? You would say the tube amp has all these wrong things about the sound. It's rumbly, it's kind of mushy on the top, there's all these extra harmonics I don't like, blah blah blah. If the solid state amp had come out first, that would have been the dominant first experience of the way an amplifier behaves with a speaker, and that's what everybody would say is the reference point, and anything after that has to match that reference point. But that isn't.
That's an extremely good point. However, maybe the distortion wouldn't have been perceived as pleasant. It's possible. Maybe the distortion would have still been rebellious, and Hendrix and whoever would have done it, but maybe they wouldn't have actually experienced it as pleasant, and maybe not done it at all. It's possible. Maybe that would have been the distortion that we now hear as pleasant, and the tube would be too muddy and not bright enough. But maybe it wouldn't have been pushed at all, because people would have said, "Yeah, no, I don't want to listen to that a whole song." It's possible.
That means you didn't want to listen to. You didn't want to listen to. You didn't want to listen to Albert King, who played through an acoustic solid state amp.
Yeah. Or didn't BB King play the Lab series?
The BB King played. You didn't want to hear him. You didn't want to hear Chicago.
Terry Kath.
You didn't want to hear Terry Kath. The first time I heard Terry Kath live, when I first heard Chicago live, the entire backline was custom amps, 200-watt solid-state guitar amps with 15-inch JBL speakers in them. You didn't want to hear that? He sounded fucking amazing. So it really all goes back to the player using the tools that he's presented with and making a statement with that. And that's what sets your expectation. Not any of this 2% harmonic distortion and frequency response. That's irrelevant. The only thing is I personally like, why do we make tube amps? I personally like them. I like the way they behave. I like the way that I can manipulate the behavior of a transformer and the behavior of a speaker and the behavior of a cabinet to accentuate the things that I like. And my philosophy has always been, if 1,000 or 2,000 people agree with the thing that I like, then they're my potential customers, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. That goes back to Henning talking about, basically doing what you like and doing what you're passionate about, rather than, this is going to be my market and I'm looking for money, right?
And I'm also not afraid to break things and not afraid for things to catch on fire. So I do things that nobody else in their right mind would do with gear, because I want to see what'll happen, because it's fun, because if it does break and smoke comes out, I'm happy as a 5-year-old, 10-year-old kid that put firecrackers in his models. All of that is a positive experience for me. We went to the NAMM show one year and we brought a rack that had a 252 power amp, a 292 power amp, a 2150 power amp, and a classic power amp, all in the same rack. And the preamp was plugged into the first power amp, and the output of that power amp was plugged into the input of the second, and the output of that was plugged into the input of the third, and the output of that was plugged into the input of the fourth, and the output of that one was plugged into cabs. And they were all set at volumes so that they would work together without just erupting into flames. And people listen to it and go, I've never heard such a rich combination of harmonics in my entire existence as a guitar player. What are you doing? And I would show them this, and they go, how come it isn't? Where are your fire extinguishers? Why isn't it just blowing up? Because I know how to make it do that without breaching, the dam. I just know how to get away with it. It's not anything I would recommend you do.
No, most certainly not. But now, of course, I will.
Do it. More video fodder.
My dad was a furniture salesman, and a couple would come in and they're looking for a dresser, chest of drawers, And he would go, "Oh, this brand is a really well-known brand. It's a really high-quality piece of furniture. You'll get a lot of use out of this." Well, how do we know it's as good as you say it is? He would take out a can of lighter fluid and pour the lighter fluid on the top, and take out he's the smoker, so he'd take out his lighter and light the lighter fluid. Woof! The top of the dresser would go up in flames, and then he would take a rag and wipe it. And to put out the flames, he would wipe off the top. And they would just like go. And he goes, "Feel that finish. See? Look at it really closely. See, it didn't even hurt the finish. Feel it. It's smooth. It didn't melt anything. This is a high quality piece of furniture." And they would like, "Sold. Boom." Sold. And then he would have this smile on his face. And he goes, "Works every time." So what is that? Why do you do that? He goes, "Listen, lighter fluid, only the very top layer of the lighter fluid is what's burning. You have to put it out before all the lighter fluid burns, or it will catch on fire. You just have to know to wipe it before all the lighter fluid burns off." It was just totally, literally, sorry for the pun, smoke and mirrors. But there's this showmanship thing, you know. I mean, I do like trying crazy things that are by way of they're fun. It's an experiment. It reminds me or reacquaints me with the concept that I had maybe studied something about 20 years ago and forgotten, but I decided that it was something I wanted to experiment with again. Now that I have more perspective on it, now that I have more design chops, now that I am able to get more information out of an experiment I did 20 years ago. So this is a constantly rotating thing. While all that's going on, we've got more people trying more things with gear. There's more amplifiers out there. There's more tools and toys and accessories that people can buy to extend the utility and the usability of their gear. And that's really, really what I love about all this. In that, you get the guys that just do it wrong. They don't read the manual. My stepsister's boyfriend said, "Do this." Whatever it is, you're going to hear back from the people that didn't exactly follow the rules of the experiment and it went badly for them. And, you know, whose fault is it? It's yours. You're the guy that's out in front of us, laying out all this stuff to the end user and saying as much as you can possibly say about it and as much as you could possibly know about it. And then you're going to get the feedback from the armchair engineers, right? And we got the same thing when we did our version of the video. And you and I had this discussion. Okay, I'm going to go do it a little differently, but I'm going to sort of slop over some of the real scientific details because this isn't going to be an electronics 101 class. We're just trying to get this one little point home. And we're going to basically use each other's sort of positioning on the internet to get people to pay attention to that. And I think we accomplished that, right?
Worked. Have you ever seen the Orange series? Orange Amps did a series called How to Void Your Warranty.
No.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. You would love the shit out of it, and I actually think you should continue that because they stopped doing it. So they took comments or questions they got and did it. And the lab that they had, it might be the actual Orange lab. It looked like a workbench for amps with, oscilloscopes, but it looked like it was in an old barn. So it wasn't like it was like very British countryside amp lab. The guy had like, he looked like almost comedic, but he must be a guy from Orange. Crooked glasses, crooked British teeth, white lab coat on. And so, I mean, really beautifully done, the whole setting. And so it's like, we got this question, so can you take like the output of an amp into the input of another amp? Well, I wouldn't recommend that, but let's go for it. So they took a Terra 15 watt amp and literally took the cab out into the input, and they did that, and then they just see if they could blow it up. And what it sounded like is that, well, it sounds like ass, but nothing's blowing up here. They did taking a 100 watt amp, whatever, into a pair of headphones, and they were literally, sometimes there was smoke. And at the first Toma and Gearhead University, Orange did that with a lot of YouTubers. So Glenn Fricker they're going up on a huge crane and they were throwing amps off buildings, and like How to Avoid Your Warranty was a beautiful series, like funny, minorly scientific, but like the crazy shit that, as you said, you wouldn't want me to do, doing that in a funny way, and knowing, look, I've got this old piece of gear here that if it blows up, it's not gonna break the bank.
Right.
Doing stuff like that would be super interesting. Like, what's gonna happen if I take this amp and
it's the Mythbusters
mismatching?
Yeah,
right.
Mythbusters for the gear set.
Of course, we throw sand in everybody's face by doing the self attenuation mode of the power station, and we got a lot of feedback about that. You can't do that, but you're doing it. Wow. And
but also if you break it, you know where to get another power station.
Yeah. It actually was a safe way to operate the power station, but it sounds completely horribly wrong. And I kind of bit the bullet on that one, and I went, you know what? This actually works. It actually will make somebody's sonic life a little more interesting, and it's not dangerous, but it's sure going to be perceived as we're giving you a crash course on how to destroy a power station. But we put it out there and we explained it a couple of different ways. Joe did a great video on it, and now it's just kind of the way you can use the power station. You can't do that with a Boss TAE. You can't do it with an aux. You can't do it with any of the other attenuators out there that are reamp style attenuators, because you will mess something up. But just because of the topology of the power station that it is, you can do it on that. And of course, we really enjoy kind of owning that little space of what and some engineering guy or some tech out in the field somewhere would find terrifying, but no, that's the way factory said to do it.
But here's the thing. I have questions because about amps, because there's certain things we've always been warned about. I would love to see a series where you literally do the things we're warned about, to find out, for example, what is the time frame. So, for example, we are clearly told, do not take an amp without a load. You always have to have a cab on it. So here's the thing. If have my amp on and I'm setting up for a video, I will pull out the speaker from the amp for 20 seconds or whatever when I'm doing something, because I'm thinking, well, that's probably not going to kill it. But the question is, what is the duration of, let's say, a 50 watt head at a reasonable volume at which it can play without a load before what happens? And what does happen? So if you've got a 50 watt head that you can repair, show us how long you can do that, because some people might be like, I'm completely paranoid. Oh my God, I can never have this on. Or can you literally have this on for 10 minutes before, or an hour, or whatever?
Okay. Remember Joe's comment about us giving you permission to put a gun to your head? Mm-hmm. We use a PS2, which is a 50 watt power amp. We use that for testing other power stations all day long. It runs 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, with the power switch and in operate mode with no load on the output, with a signal plugged into the input, literally all day long. It gets plugged into loads, it gets disconnected from loads, plugged into other power stations plugged into other gear, plugged into speakers. And when you're plugging it in and unplugging it, if the jack that the speaker cable is plugging into has a metal sleeve, it's actually instantaneously shorting when you're plugging it in and unplugging it. And so the answer to your question is, under certain circumstances, you can take a 50-watt head.
You're gonna say it. You're gonna
set
say
the gain to a certain level and set the master volume to a certain level and play it for 4 straight hours with no load on it, and nothing is going to happen except that you're not going to hear anything out of it. And what stops you from doing that? You don't hear anything out of it. So you put the guitar down and you go to try to figure out why you don't hear anything out of it. When are you going to damage your amp? Perfect example is we have a band that's recording. They're in the studio and they've got a 2150 power amp. They have both channels cranked. Each channel is going into a 412 Marshall cab. It's all mic'd up. It's all sounding great. They're tracking. And then the engineer goes, he's flicking buttons on the desk and he's going, there's nothing coming out of the right speaker on my monitor, the right cab. And they go back in the control room and there's the speakers. There's no sound coming out of the speaker cab. So they pull another speaker cab and plug it into the amp. There's no sound out of that. They plug a different amp into that cab. There's no sound out of that. Then they plug the output of the amp that wasn't making any sound into a new cab. There's no sound out of that. What all happened? They were so busy enthusiastically blasting away for quite a long time, and they blew a speaker in the 412 cab. One. If you blow one speaker in the 412 cab, that will usually take out 2 speakers. One will blow, and then the other one, it's in series with the other one, so the other one will turn off. That will leave you with 2 speakers left. Now, those remaining 2 speakers are getting twice as much power as they were before. So now they're going to start heating up faster. And then you're going to blow one of them, and the other one's going to get saved because one of them blew first. So now you've got 2 good speakers in the cab that you can't hear and 2 blown speakers that are preventing the other 2 from working. And when you plug the amp into another cab, there's still no sound. Okay, let's check the speaker fuse, the DC fuse. It's blown. Okay, we put the fuse in, and there's still no sound. All right, call the factory. They call us. What happened? They bring it over. The output transformer is blown. What happened? Over the course of cranking away, doing these tracks, they had progressively gone through this process of blowing a speaker and then a second speaker and then running the amp at a very high level with no load on it until a tube finally shorted and blew the DC fuse, and they kept trying to make it work after that, and then as in the process damaged the output transformer. It took them half a day to do that, of seriously trying hard as professional rock guitar players. They had to work at it. If you blow an output transformer, it's going to blow for 3 reasons. It's cheaply made. You abuse the hell out of it, or it's a manufacturing defect, and that's it.
That in itself, testing that, showing it, and making a video about it, that is something that I think guitar players need to know and need to see.
How do we do that without taking a whole day to make the video?
I mean,
that's why Henning hasn't done it yet.
Yeah,
no, I can't repair amps, but I also don't know too much about it. But if you put a looper on the floor and you have that playing, and you simply have a time lapse camera, you can find out how long it takes for an amp to blow up. The thing is, we all think we're talking seconds, or never ever turn an amp on without a load, and that's simply not true. And
I can't tell you how many emails we get from customers that I turned the standby switch on my amp with no speaker connected to it. Did I blow up the amp? Were you playing through it? No, I just turned the switch on. No, then you're fine. Are you sure? Yes. Trust me.
Yeah, see, these need to be videos. Like how to blow your output transformer. We'll show you how, and you literally show how. But for example, impedance mismatch. What can happen? Because I don't know what impedance is. It's something about ohms, and that sounds like gnomes, and that's funny to me. I don't know these things. In a parody, you can go down or up, or one direction is okay.
Here's the big news. The big message is this: a part like that, like an output transformer, rarely fails as a consequence of one failure mode, one condition. It's usually a combination of 2 or 3 things. It finally gives up the ghost. Impedance mismatching, for example, depends on the amp. An amp that's got a lot of power and can deliver a lot of transient headroom and stuff like that, which means an amp that's got a pretty heavy duty power supply in it, a power supply that can deliver a lot of voltage to the tubes, a 100-watt amp that really is doing 100 watts as opposed to a 100-watt amp that's doing 70. A high-powered amp, if a tube fails when you're playing through it, the fuse is going to blow. There's going to be one failure mode. One of several failure modes of a power tube can be that it shorts internally. And you'll be able to see that when you replace the fuse and look at the back of the amp and go from standby to on again, and you see a blue flash, poof, and then you try playing through it, there's no sound, and you check, you blew the fuse again. If, for example, you are playing loud and the speaker comes disconnected from the amp and that tube arcs, it could put a high voltage arc across the transformer that can cause it to fail. It's more likely to happen if there is an impedance mismatch, and usually if the mismatch is going in one particular direction. For example, you have a 16 ohm amp plugged into an 8 ohm cab. If the cab comes disconnected, the voltage surge, it's called a flyback spike. That spike that occurs across the 16 ohm setting is going to be greater than if the transformer was set to the 8 ohm setting. So again, it's a confluence of 2 or 3 different things that all have to happen on the right time of the right day under the right circumstances for any of those things that you say you don't know about to really matter enough to result in a catastrophic failure. And that's so rare, but it's catastrophic enough and expensive enough of a repair that when it does happen, you're screwed. It could cause some related damage. In an old Marshall, you would see arcs across the pins on the tube sockets, and then you would see vintage Marshalls with like one replaced tube socket because it arced. Once there's a carbon arc in the socket, you have to replace it. On PC boards, if they're not well designed and not protected from flyback arcs, it could damage the circuit board. Expensive. So
do you see that question, Steve? Do your amps have flyback diodes?
Yes, they all do. And they have flyback diodes in parallel with snubber capacitors. Now, flyback diodes will not stop the flyback. I see some amplifiers that have flyback diodes. That's an amp that was designed by somebody that doesn't know the engineering behind flyback diodes. What it does is when the tube arcs and you get this big spike, that flyback diode redirects that voltage back into the power supply into ground where it can't do any damage. But there's still a big spike there. Ours have the diode and a snubber capacitor across it, which limits the intensity of that spike and helps protect the output transformer. So both of those things really need to take place. Well, if you put the capacitor in there, it could short out too. Good. That's what we want. We want the diode to short. We want the capacitor to short. Why do we want those things to happen? Because we want it to blow the DC fuse before the output transformer becomes the fuse that blows. We want the 10-cent fuse to blow before the $150 fuse blows. And that just goes back to engineering it all the way from reliable from the manufacturer's point of view to reliable to the serial amp abuser's point of view. And we welcome being able to, I mean, we appreciate being able to put this gear in the hands of players who will do their damnedest to blow it up, because now we know that we're getting the absolute maximum out of it. And that whatever happens is not going to be, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's just going to be an occurrence that, we as guitar players who use tube amplifiers are going to run across all day long. And it's not unique to tube amplifiers, solid state amplifiers.
I think it would be a great series to make, but I'm going to have to say it, without technical stuff.
Yeah.
No, honestly, the thing is, I don't need or want to know why.
I don't think most people need to know why.
So I need to know from a professional, look, we tried to blow this up. It took us quite a while. So if you're running your amp for a minute without being on a load, you're okay. I could explain to you why. If you want to stay in the video now, good. I'm going to explain this a little bit. Or what if by accident I grab an instrument cable instead of a speaker cable? What can that do? You'll be fine. It's yes, no, why? But then go into but don't make it super technical, because people will then be hesitant to watch it. Having it be short and funny and stupid,
yeah,
but we still get the information out there, because these are all things. I mean, I saw a guy in a classic rock band, and his grandma gave him money, and he bought the Marshall Jimi Hendrix stack. Okay.
Oh yeah, the 45-100, the whole
full stack. So I'm in their rehearsal, and it sounds like complete ass, because he didn't know how to set up that amp. It was just loud. So I look in the back, and kid had no idea what a speaker cable was. Also didn't use an instrument cable. There was a tiny little headphone cable with a mini with the small plugs. Okay, what are the 3.5s, right? And so he had that, and he had adapters on each side to headphone, like the 6.5.
And he had ingenuity.
So he had MacGyvered this tiny headphone cable as his speaker cable for a non-master volume amp. And even I back in the day was like, Benny, you please turn your amp off right now. You cannot do that.
We had a guy
with a $6,000 stack.
Yeah, we had a guy that called up and said, my pit bull is smoking. What did I do? I don't know. What did you do? Tell us the story. Well, I just plugged it into the wall and turned it on and made this horrible hum, and then smoke came out of it. Just when you turned it on, it started making this horrible hum. Yeah. Says, listen. There's somebody calling me right now. It's kind of an emergency. Can you give me your number and I'll call you right back? And I can call you back in an hour. And he goes, well, it's a different time zone here. So can you you either call me the next morning or can you just call me right away? I said, well, where are you? I'm in Australia. Like, okay, give me the serial number of the amp and I'll call you back real shortly. So he gives me the serial number of the amp. It's a US version. And so I call him back.
You'd think that's obvious, but it isn't obvious.
It gets better. It gets better. Call him back. I said, okay, so you took an Australian power cord and plugged it into this amp that said 120 volts on the back of it. Is that what you did? He goes, I don't know. I just plugged the cord in that came with it. And I said, the power cord that comes with that amplifier doesn't have the Australian plug on it. How did you connect it to the wall? Oh, it's easy. I just bent the pins out a little bit. And I mean, they're out there. And they're dangerous people.
Just bent that. Oh my god! Oh my god! And
you never know. I mean, this is
why his amp is smoking.
This is why we talk about, and this is why all amp companies tread very carefully into these areas, because you never know who you're going to be talking to and what they're going to bring to the conversation.
Wow, that's bananas.
Wow.
Well, hey, I need to throw this out here. Henning came on at 3. I think it's about 6.
Yeah, I need to go
3 hours.
That's yeah.
I wanted to let you off the hook if that's where we're at.
Yeah,
this coffee was done 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I figured. You're doing great, buddy.
Well,
very impressive.
We had a lot of fun. We covered a lot of topics. We bored some people to death for a minute, and then we got exciting again. And I had a blast, and I'm really, really, really happy that you were able to give us this period of your time, this discussion. And I had so much fun, interacting with you on these 2 videos and basically getting everybody all hair on fire about this so that they would basically pay attention to the.
And they still didn't. And some of them literally looked at your title and thought you were gonna say I'm an idiot, and then they immediately went into the comments, "Yo, I hate these videos too." The internet is not a good place to work on.
No, it's just another territory to navigate that has, cliffs and rolling rocks and
pedo bears.
Earth is starting to be not a good place to Scott is saying it. Earth is starting to be not a good place to work on. So
oh yeah.
Yeah, so let's not go there. It's we had elections in Germany today. Good times.
Oh my god.
It's bad times. Bad times.
Yeah. Well, my heart goes out to Germany, and I hope you guys make something useful out of that. And thanks for hanging with us. We love you, and onward and upward, eh?
Yep. Well, that's Canadian. We'll talk.
Well, there's a couple of people from Kanakistan on here that
Kanakistan. We shall talk privately when the GDP whatever the thing is called, when Frank is going to be here. And I looked at it. I looked at the front. I looked at the back. I saw some things. I don't know what it does and why, but I guess you'll explain.
Blow it up.
Okay, I'm gonna go to bed now.
Good night.
All right, Henning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Sweet dreams.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah. All right, everybody.
Count animals.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.